She was worth $400 million. She had resigned from one of the most powerful tech companies in the world just 12 hours ago. And now she was standing on his porch at 7 in the morning, holding a single suitcase, asking if his joke from yesterday still stood. Evan Brooks was a single father living paycheck to paycheck in a cabin that needed a new roof. His daughter's shoes had holes in them. He hadn't been on a date in 6 years. "You said I could move in if I ever got tired of everything," Claire Monroe said quietly. "I'm tired, Evan. I'm so tired. Before you judge what happened next, you need to hear the whole story. Please stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. This is what happens when exhaustion meets loneliness, and both refuse to let go." The afternoon sun cut through the trees at a low angle, painting everything gold and making even the peeling paint on Evan Brooks's cabin look almost intentional, almost charming. He sat on the warped wooden steps of his front porch, hunched over a disaster of cardboard, glitter, and broken popsicle sticks, the remains of what was supposed to be a solar system model for his daughter's third-grade science fair. Saturn's rings had collapsed. Again. "Dad," Lily said from beside him, her voice patient in that way only 8-year-olds can manage when they're watching an adult fail at something simple. "You're using too much glue." "I'm using the exact right amount of glue," Evan muttered, even as a thick white glob dripped onto his jeans. "The glue is fine. The problem is physics. Saturn shouldn't have rings in the first place. It's showing off." Lily giggled, and the sound loosened something in his chest that had been tight all day, all week, all year, if he was being honest. He wiped his hands on his already ruined jeans and looked at his daughter, really looked at her. She had her mother's eyes, that deep brown that seemed to hold entire conversations without words. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail he'd attempted that morning, and it was already half falling out, wisps escaping around her face like they were making a break for freedom. She was beautiful. She was everything, and he was failing her in 1,000 small ways every single day. "We'll figure it out," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "We always do, right?" "Right," Lily agreed, but her eyes drifted to the model with visible doubt. The sound of tires on gravel made them both look up. A sleek black car, the kind that probably cost more than Evan made in 2 years, was pulling into the driveway of the cabin next door. The rental property had been empty for months, ever since the Hendersons had stopped coming up for summers. Evan had almost forgotten anyone else existed out here, in this forgotten corner of the world. "Someone's moving in?" Lily asked, perking up with the natural curiosity of a child who didn't see new faces very often. "Looks like it. Probably just a vacation rental." The car door opened and a woman stepped out. Evan's first thought was that she didn't belong here. Not in a dismissive way, just an observational one. She was wearing clothes that looked like they'd never touched a speck of dust, her dark hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. Even from 50 feet away, he could see the rigid set of her spine, the tension in her shoulders, the way she moved like someone who had forgotten how to simply exist without purpose. She stood there for a long moment, just staring at the cabin in front of her, and something in her posture made Evan think of a bird that had flown into a window, still standing, still breathing, but fundamentally stunned. "She looks sad," Lily said quietly. "Yeah," Evan agreed, surprised by his daughter's perception. "She does." The woman seemed to shake herself, then walked to the trunk to retrieve a single suitcase. Just one. For a cabin rental that could accommodate a family of 6. She rolled it up the path to the front door, fumbled with the lockbox for a moment, and disappeared inside. "Should we say hi?" Lily asked. "Maybe tomorrow. Let her get settled." But Evan found himself glancing at the cabin throughout the afternoon as he continued his losing battle with the solar system. No lights came on, no movement in the windows, just that sleek car sitting in the driveway like a question mark. By the time the sun started its descent toward the tree line, Evan had managed to create something that vaguely resembled the solar system if you squinted and had generous definitions of both solar and system. Lily had wandered inside to read, leaving him alone with the crickets and his thoughts. He was just gathering up the craft supplies when he heard footsteps on the gravel path that connected the two properties. The woman from next door was walking toward him. Up close, she was striking in a way that had nothing to do with conventional beauty, though she had that too. It was her eyes, sharp and intelligent, but underneath that sharpness, something raw and wounded. She was maybe 35, though exhaustion had a way of adding years that weren't really there. "I saw you struggling with that model," she said, and her voice was exactly what he'd expected. Clear, controlled, a voice used to boardrooms and conference calls. But there was a slight tremor underneath it that didn't match the rest of her presentation. "Solar system?" Evan looked down at his creation and laughed. "Is it that obvious?" Saturn's rings gave it away. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "I did the same project when I was a kid, used cardboard and string. It fell apart during the presentation." "Sounds about right." He extended his hand, realized it was still covered in glue and glitter, and withdrew it with a sheepish grin. "Sorry. Hazardous material. I'm Evan. Evan Brooks. Claire Monroe." She didn't offer her hand either, but she nodded in a way that felt like a handshake. "I'm renting the cabin next door, apparently." "Apparently?" "I booked it 3 hours ago. Didn't even know this place existed until this afternoon." She glanced around at the trees, the mountains in the distance, the absolute silence of the world around them. "I just typed 'somewhere quiet' into a search engine, and this is where it sent me." "Well, you definitely found quiet. The nearest town is 20 minutes away, and the most exciting thing that happens around here is when the deer eat my vegetable garden." Claire's laugh surprised both of them, a short, startled sound like she'd forgotten she knew how to make it. "That sounds perfect, actually. Can I ask what you're running from?" The question came out before Evan could stop it, and he immediately regretted it. It was too personal, too presumptuous. He didn't know this woman. He had no right to. "Everything," Claire said quietly, and the single word carried so much weight that Evan felt it settle into his chest. "I'm running from everything." They stood in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that should have been awkward but somehow wasn't. The sun was touching the treetops now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Your daughter," Claire said, nodding toward the cabin. "The one with the ponytail. She yours?" "Lily, yeah, she's mine." Evan felt the familiar swell of pride mixed with terror that came with every mention of his daughter. "Just the two of us." "Her mother?" "Passed away 6 years ago." Claire's expression shifted, not to pity, which Evan had learned to hate, but to something that looked almost like recognition. "I'm sorry. Thank you." He meant it more than he usually did when he said those words. We manage. We have our routines. She's the best thing I've ever done with my life, and I'm pretty sure I'm ruining her with my subpar crafting abilities and inability to braid hair properly." Her ponytail looked fine. "You're being kind." It looked like it was staged by a small tornado. Another ghost of a laugh from Claire. She hugged her arms around herself even though the evening was warm, and Evan recognized the gesture, not cold, but trying to hold herself together. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Fair's fair." "How do you do it?" "The single parent thing, the getting up every day and just keeping going." Evan considered the question seriously because something in her voice told him she wasn't asking casually. "I don't think I do it well. I mess up constantly. I forget permission slips and burn dinner, and sometimes I'm so tired that I can barely string a sentence together. But Lily needs me to try, so I try. And when I fail, I try again tomorrow." "That simple?" "That impossible," he corrected. "But what else is there?" Claire was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the mountains that were slowly losing their color as the sun sank lower. "I used to think there was something else, something bigger, more important. I built my whole life around that belief. And now I'm standing in the middle of nowhere talking to a stranger about glitter glue, and I think this might be the first honest conversation I've had in years. I'm not sure that's a compliment to your life or an insult to this conversation. Both, maybe." She turned to look at him directly, and in the fading light her eyes were almost black. "You have a good thing here, Evan. This cabin, your daughter, this quiet life. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't enough. Nobody tells me anything. The deer and I have an understanding." She smiled. A real one this time, small but genuine, and something shifted in the air between them. Not romantic, not exactly, just two exhausted people recognizing something familiar in each other. "I should go. Claire said. I have a suitcase to unpack. Or not unpack, I haven't decided yet. How long are you staying? I don't know. She looked back at her rental cabin like she wasn't sure it was real. I genuinely don't know anything right now. It's terrifying and also kind of wonderful. If you get tired of everything, Evan heard himself saying, you can always come over. We have terrible coffee and a solar system that's probably going to fall apart again before morning. I might take you up on that. She started to walk away, then stopped, turned back. The sunset was behind her now, haloing her in fading gold. Evan? Yeah? Thank you for not asking who I am, what I do, the usual questions. I figured if it mattered, you'd tell me. And if it doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter. Something flickered across her face, surprise maybe, or relief. Good night. Good night, Claire. She disappeared into the growing darkness, and Evan stood on his porch until her cabin lights finally came on, warm and yellow against the deepening blue of the sky. Inside, Lily was curled up on the couch with a book, but she looked up when he came in. Did you meet her? I did. Her name's Claire. She seems nice. Is she staying long? She's not sure yet. Lily nodded thoughtfully, processing this information with the gravity of someone 3 times her age. She looked lonely, like the kind of lonely that goes all the way down. Evan paused in the doorway, struck again by his daughter's perception. Yeah, sweetheart, I think she might be. Maybe we can help. Maybe. We'll see. He crossed the room and kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar smell of her shampoo. Apple, because she'd insisted on it after seeing a commercial. Time to start thinking about bed. The solar system is going to fall apart. I know. We should probably fix it. Tomorrow. Everything looks better in the morning. Lily accepted this with the skepticism of a child who had learned that mornings rarely fixed anything, but she closed her book and headed toward her room anyway. At the doorway, she paused. Dad? Yeah? I hope she figures out what she's running from. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Evan spent the next hour cleaning up the craft supplies, then sat on the porch with a beer he couldn't really afford, watching the stars emerge one by one. The cabin next door had gone dark. Claire must have decided to actually sleep for once. Or maybe she was just sitting in the darkness like he sometimes did, wondering how life had led to this exact moment. He thought about what she'd said, about being tired of everything, about running. He understood that impulse better than he wanted to admit. There had been nights, especially in the first year after Sarah died, when he thought about just getting in the car and driving until the road ended, just disappearing into somewhere that didn't hold memories in every corner. But Lily had needed him. Lily still needed him. And somewhere along the way, he'd stopped wanting to run and started wanting to stay. Not because he was happy, exactly, but because this life, however imperfect, was his. He wondered if Claire had anyone who needed her like that. Someone who made the staying worth the staying. The night settled around him, heavy with summer warmth and cricket songs. He finished his beer and went inside, checked on Lily one more time. She was asleep with her book still clutched in her hands, and finally allowed himself to collapse into bed. His dreams were strange that night. Not bad, just strange. Sarah was there, but she wasn't sick anymore. She was standing in the kitchen of their old apartment, the one they'd had before Lily was born, and she was laughing at something he couldn't hear. Then she turned to him and said, very clearly, "She's going to need you to be brave." "Who?" he asked. But Sarah just smiled and faded into the morning light. Evan woke with the sunrise, as he always did. His body had forgotten how to sleep past 6 a.m. Parenthood had done that to him, hardwired his circadian rhythm to match a child's unpredictable schedule. He lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to hold on to the feeling of the dream, but it slipped away like water through his fingers. The coffee maker groaned to life, and he shuffled to the kitchen to begin the familiar morning routine. Start the coffee, check the weather, think about what to make for breakfast. Wonder if they had enough milk. A knock on the door shattered the silence. Evan glanced at the clock. 7:03 a.m. Nobody knocked on his door at 7:03 a.m. Nobody knocked on his door at any time, really. The mailman left packages on the porch. The few friends he had texted before coming over. His parents were 300 miles away and had never visited once since he'd moved out here. He opened the door. Claire Monroe was standing on his porch, and she had her suitcase with her. She looked different from last night, smaller somehow, like the darkness had been holding her together, and now, in the harsh light of morning, she was coming undone at the seams. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her perfect hair tangled, and she was wearing the same clothes she'd had on yesterday, wrinkled now from a night of not sleeping. "You said I could move in," she said, and her voice cracked on the last word. "If I got tired of everything. You said that." Evan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I was joking." "I know." She pressed her lips together hard, like she was trying to keep something from spilling out. "I know you were joking, but I've been sitting in that cabin all night, and I quit my job yesterday, Evan. I walked away from everything I've spent 15 years building, and I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anyone to call. I have a penthouse apartment in a city I hate, and a car I bought because someone told me I should, and a contact list full of people who will stop returning my calls the moment they find out I'm nobody now. Claire, I'm not asking for forever. I'm not asking for anything, really. I just need—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "I don't know what I need. But you looked at me last night like I was a person instead of a position, and I can't remember the last time that happened." Evan stared at her. His coffee was getting cold on the counter. Somewhere in the cabin, Lily was probably starting to wake up, and he'd have to explain why there was a strange woman with a suitcase in their living room. This was insane. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not in real life, not in his life. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. "Really?" Claire's laugh was hollow. "I was the CEO of Vance Technologies. Youngest woman to ever hold that position. $400 million net worth as of yesterday's stock prices. I've been on the cover of Forbes and Fortune and every other magazine that thinks success can be measured in zeros." She looked down at her suitcase. "And I resigned at 11 o'clock last night via email because I couldn't breathe anymore, and I couldn't remember why any of it mattered. 400 million, give or take." Evan looked at her, really looked at her, the way he'd looked at Lily yesterday. This woman who had everything the world said you should want, standing on his porch at 7 in the morning, asking if she could stay in a cabin that needed a new roof with a man who had $43 in his bank account. "My daughter's shoes have holes in them," he said. "I can't afford to replace them until next month. I don't care about money. I'm saying that because I need you to understand what you're walking into. This isn't a vacation. This isn't a cute little escape from your real life. This is my real life. Bills I can't pay and dinners I burn and a kid who deserves so much more than I can give her. If you're looking for something picturesque, you've got the wrong cabin." Claire met his eyes. "I'm looking for something real. That's all. Just real." The word hung between them, fragile and heavy at the same time. "Dad?" Lily's voice came from behind him, sleepy and confused. "Who's at the door?" Evan turned. His daughter was standing in the hallway in her pajamas, hair a mess, rubbing her eyes. She looked past him to Claire, and something in her expression shifted. Recognition, maybe, or that strange intuition children sometimes have. "That's Claire," Evan said, "from next door." "I remember. The lonely one." Claire made a small sound, almost like a sob caught in her throat. Lily walked forward, past Evan, and stopped in front of Claire. She studied her for a long moment with those eyes that were so much like her mother's. "Are you staying for breakfast?" Lily asked. Claire looked at Evan, helpless. "I don't know." "You should stay. Dad makes really good pancakes. Well, sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're kind of burned. But the burned ones are still okay if you put enough syrup on them." "Lily," Evan started. "She's sad, Dad." Lily's voice was matter-of-fact, the way children are when they're stating obvious truths that adults have learned to dance around. "We help sad people. That's what you always say." Evan closed his eyes. Sarah's voice echoed in his head, the dream he couldn't quite remember. "She's going to need you to be brave." "Okay," he heard himself say. "Okay, just come inside. We'll figure it out." Claire stepped over the threshold, and the morning light followed her in. The next few hours unfolded in a blur of pancakes and awkward silences, with Lily filling every gap in conversation with questions about everything: where Claire was from, what her favorite color was, had she ever seen a real live bear? Did she know that Saturn's rings were made of ice and rock and maybe pieces of old moons? Claire answered each question with growing steadiness, her voice finding its footing as Lily's relentless curiosity gave her something to hold on to. By the time the dishes were cleared, some of the haunted look had faded from her eyes, replaced by something that might have been exhaustion or might have been relief. "I should explain," Claire said when Lily had finally been convinced to go get dressed for the day, "about who I am, what I was." "You already did. The headlines version, not the real version." Evan leaned against the counter, coffee in hand. "Tell me the real version." Claire was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the mountains. "I started at Vance when I was 22, right out of college. I was hungry and smart and completely willing to sacrifice everything for success. And I did. I sacrificed friendships and relationships and my health and whatever part of me used to know how to just be a person instead of a position." That sounds exhausting. It was. But it was also intoxicating. Every promotion, every milestone, every time someone told me I was impressive or groundbreaking or a role model, it was like a drug. I needed more. I always needed more. "What changed?" Claire turned to look at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. 3 weeks ago, I was in a board meeting. We were discussing a merger that would probably destroy 20,000 jobs but make our shareholders very happy. And I looked around the table at all these people in their expensive suits, saying things like acceptable losses and strategic repositioning, and I realized I didn't recognize any of them. I didn't recognize myself. "So you quit?" "Not right away. First, I went home to my penthouse apartment and I stood at the window looking at the city, and I tried to remember the last time I'd felt something that wasn't stress or ambition or fear. And I couldn't. I genuinely couldn't remember the last time I'd been happy." "And that was 3 weeks ago?" "The board meeting was 3 weeks ago. The standing at the window and having an existential crisis was ongoing." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "I kept going to work, kept doing the job, told myself I was overreacting. But last night, I was supposed to attend a charity gala, the kind where everyone writes big checks and pretends to care about things they don't actually care about, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I wrote my resignation letter in the car, emailed it from my phone, then I started driving. And ended up here. And ended up here." She spread her hands. "The entire trajectory of my life changed in 12 hours because I Googled somewhere quiet, and your little corner of the world came up." Evan considered this. Considered her. Considered the absolutely insane situation he had somehow found himself in. "You could be anywhere right now," he said slowly. "You could be on a beach in Bali. You could be in a luxury spa in Switzerland. You have the money to literally do anything, go anywhere. Why are you standing in my kitchen?" Claire's answer came without hesitation. "Because you didn't know who I was, and you invited me in anyway. I invited you over for bad coffee. I didn't invite you to move in." "I know. And if you want me to leave, I'll leave. I'll go back to the rental cabin and figure out what comes next on my own. I'm not trying to impose or—" "Claire." He set down his coffee cup. "I didn't say I wanted you to leave. I'm just trying to understand why you want to stay." "Because it's real here." Her voice broke slightly on the word. "Because your daughter has holes in her shoes and you're stressed about money and there's a solar system falling apart on your dining room table. Because you looked at me last night like I was a person, not a CEO or a success story or a threat or an opportunity. Just a person. You are just a person. No one has treated me like one in years." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of her words settling between them. "I don't want your money," Evan said finally. "I need you to understand that. Whatever this is, whatever you need, I'm not looking for a solution to my financial problems. I know. And I can't promise anything. I don't know if this is going to work or if we're both going to regret it by tomorrow. I've got a daughter to think about, and she has to come first. I would never expect anything different. And you'll have to explain to Lily why you're here, in terms she can understand. She's 8, but she's smart. She'll know if you're lying." Claire nodded, something like hope flickering in her eyes. "So I can stay?" Evan thought about Sarah, about the dream, about the strange path that had led this woman to his doorstep. "You can stay," he said. "For now. We'll take it one day at a time." Claire's whole body seemed to sag with relief. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't tried my cooking beyond pancakes." I've eaten at five-star restaurants around the world. I'm sure I can survive. You say that now. Wait until you experience my interpretation of spaghetti. The sound of footsteps announced Lily's return, now dressed in shorts and a t-shirt with a unicorn on it. She looked between the two adults, her expression thoughtful. Is Claire staying? She asked. Evan nodded. For a while, yeah. In the guest room? In the guest room. Lily considered this, then walked over to Claire and took her hand. I can show you where everything is. The bathroom is kind of small, but it has good water pressure. Dad says that's important. Claire looked down at the small hand in hers, and something in her face shifted, cracked open maybe, in the way faces do when walls start to fall. I would like that very much, she said softly. Come on. Lily tugged her toward the hallway. And I can show you my room. I have a lot of books. You can borrow them if you want, but you have to give them back because some of them were my mom's. They disappeared down the hall, and Evan stood alone in the kitchen, wondering what exactly he had just agreed to. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his boss at the hardware store where he worked part-time. Need you to cover a shift today. Can you come in by noon? Normal life still happening, bills to pay and shifts to cover and a daughter to raise. And now a former CEO sleeping in his guest room because she'd forgotten how to be a person and somehow thought he could teach her. What are you doing, Evan? He muttered to himself. But even as he said it, he remembered the way Claire had looked at Lily, the way something had shifted in her eyes when his daughter had taken her hand. Whatever this was, mistake or miracle, it was already in motion. He texted his boss back. I'll be there. Then he went to finish cleaning up breakfast and tried not to think too hard about the fact that everything in his carefully constructed life had just changed in ways he couldn't begin to predict. The day unfolded in pieces. Evan's shift at the hardware store. Lily, under the watch of Mrs. Henderson from 3 miles down the road, who charged $15 for a few hours of childcare, and Claire presumably settling into the guest room and trying to remember what rest felt like. When Evan got home at 6, the cabin smelled different. Not bad, just different. He followed the scent to the kitchen and found Claire standing at the stove, stirring something that actually looked edible. You cooked, he said, surprised. I used to, before everything, when I was younger. She didn't turn around. I found some things in your pantry. I hope you don't mind. Mind? I think this might be the first meal that hasn't come from a box or a can in months. Lily was at the table working on the solar system, which had been miraculously repaired. Claire fixed Saturn, she announced. She used wire instead of cardboard. Look, Dad, the rings stay now. Evan looked. They did stay. The whole thing looked almost professional. I had a little time, Claire said, finally turning around. She looked better than she had that morning, still tired, but less like she might shatter at the slightest touch. Lily showed me the problem. It was just an engineering issue. Just an engineering issue, Evan repeated. Sure. I studied engineering before I switched to business. Seemed useful. Claire knows a lot of stuff, Lily said authoritatively. She explained how rockets work, and she helped me with my math homework. She makes math make sense. High praise, Evan said. Lily's math homework has defeated me more than once. Third-grade math is surprisingly complicated these days. They ate dinner together, the three of them at the small table, Lily chattering away about everything she'd done that day, Claire listening with an intensity that suggested she wasn't used to conversations that didn't have agendas. Evan watched them both, still not quite believing this was his life now. After dinner, Lily asked if Claire would read to her before bed. Claire looked at Evan, uncertain, and he nodded. They disappeared into Lily's room, and he could hear the murmur of Claire's voice reading something about a magical land with talking animals. He stood at the sink, washing dishes, and tried to name the feeling in his chest. It took him a while to identify it because it had been so long since he'd felt it. It was hope. Dangerous, fragile, probably stupid hope, but hope nonetheless. Claire emerged 20 minutes later, closing Lily's door softly behind her. She fell asleep during Chapter 3. That's her record. Usually it's Chapter 2. They stood in the living room, the space between them filled with all the things neither of them knew how to say. Thank you, Claire said finally, for today, for letting me cook and fix the solar system and just be here. You don't have to thank me. I know, but I want to. She hesitated. I haven't felt this calm in years, maybe ever. It's a quiet place. It's more than that. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face for something he couldn't name. It's you. It's Lily. It's the way you live. Like the world doesn't have to be so complicated. The world is complicated. I just choose not to engage with most of it. Maybe that's the wisdom everyone else is missing. Evan shrugged, uncomfortable with the weight she was putting on his choices. I'm not wise. I'm just tired. It's easy to simplify when you don't have the energy for complexity. I think that's exactly what wisdom is. They lapsed into silence again. Outside, the stars were emerging, and the temperature was dropping toward comfortable. Would you like to sit on the porch? Evan asked. I have one more beer in the fridge. You can have it. I'll have water. You should have the beer. Guest rules. Claire's lips twitched. Is that a thing? It is now. They ended up sharing the beer, passing it back and forth as they sat on the porch steps and watched the sky deepen into full darkness. The silence between them was easy now, comfortable in a way that usually took years to develop. Tell me about Sarah, Claire said quietly. If you want to. Evan took a long drink of the beer before answering. She was... Everything good about me is because of her. We met in college. She was studying early childhood education. I was aimless, just taking classes because that's what you were supposed to do. She gave me direction, gave me Lily, gave me a reason to be someone worth being. How did she die? Cancer. The kind that moves fast and doesn't give you time to prepare. One day she was tired more than usual. 3 months later, she was gone. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. That's what they say. What else can they say? He wasn't bitter, just stating facts. The hard part isn't the loss. The hard part is learning to keep living after. Learning to be happy again without feeling like you're betraying her memory. Have you? Learned to be happy? Evan considered the question. I've learned to be content. Happy feels like too much to ask for, but Lily is happy, most of the time, and that's enough. You deserve more than enough. Maybe, but I've gotten used to enough. It's not a bad thing. He glanced at her. What about you? Anyone waiting for you back in that city you hate? No one who matters. I had relationships, but they were more like strategic partnerships. Two successful people combining their brands. She shook her head. That sounds terrible when I say it out loud. It sounds lonely. It was. It is. She wrapped her arms around herself, that gesture he was starting to recognize. I think I forgot how to actually connect with people. I got so good at the performance of connection that I stopped knowing how to do it for real. You're connecting now. Am I? She looked at him, genuinely uncertain. Or am I just performing a different role? The burned-out executive seeking redemption in a small town. It's a little on the nose, isn't it? Probably, but real life is usually on the nose. Subtlety is for movies. Claire laughed, a real laugh, unexpected and bright in the darkness. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone who would be impressed by who I was, or intimidated, or trying to figure out how to profit from the situation. I told you I don't want your money. I know, that's what makes you not what I expected. They finished the beer and Claire stood, brushing off her pants. I should try to sleep. It's been a long few days. The guest room bed is decent. I replaced the mattress last year, one of my better purchases. Thank you for everything. Stop thanking me. Okay? She paused at the door. Good night, Evan. Good night, Claire. She went inside and he stayed on the porch for a while longer, listening to the night sounds and thinking about all the ways this situation could go wrong. But somewhere underneath all the doubt and caution, that small flame of hope continued to burn. Maybe, he thought, this was how new lives started. Not with grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but with shared dinners and fixed solar systems and quiet conversations on dark porches. Maybe Claire Monroe had shown up at his door for a reason he couldn't understand yet. Or maybe this was just chaos dressed up as fate, and tomorrow everything would come crashing down. Either way, he thought as he finally went inside, it was too late to turn back now. The days that followed settled into an unexpected rhythm. Claire woke early, before either Evan or Lily, and made coffee that was infinitely better than anything Evan had ever managed. She cooked breakfast, nothing fancy, just eggs and toast, but she did it with a quiet competence that made the kitchen feel less like a battleground and more like a home. Lily attached herself to Claire like a small, enthusiastic barnacle. She showed Claire her book collection, her rock collection, the spot by the creek where she'd once seen a fox. She asked questions constantly about cities and airplanes and what it was like to be in charge of thousands of people. Claire answered every question with patience, but Evan noticed how she deflected the ones about power and success, steering the conversations back to Lily's interests instead. It was like watching someone slowly remember how to be human again, one small interaction at a time. On the third day, Evan came home from work to find Claire and Lily in the backyard, planting seeds in the vegetable garden that had been overtaken by weeds. "We're growing tomatoes," Lily announced, "and cucumbers. And Claire says maybe we can try strawberries, but they're harder." "Since when do you know about gardening?" Evan asked Claire. "I don't really, but I can learn. There are books." She looked up at him, dirt on her cheek, and smiled. A real smile, unguarded. "I'm good at learning." "She's really good at learning," Lily confirmed. "She learned all the constellations last night. We looked at the stars and she memorized them." Evan felt something shift in his chest. Something dangerous. "I should start dinner," he said, retreating to the safety of the kitchen. But he watched them through the window as he cooked, Claire showing Lily how to space the seeds, Lily explaining the intricate social dynamics of her school, both of them laughing at something he couldn't hear. The feeling in his chest grew stronger. That night, after Lily was asleep, Claire found him on the porch again. "You're avoiding me," she said. "I'm not." "You are." She sat down beside him, closer than she had before. "Did I do something wrong?" "No." He stared at the stars, unwilling to look at her. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Then what is it?" Evan was quiet for a long moment. "I'm scared," he finally admitted. "Of what?" "Of this. Of you. Of how quickly this is starting to feel normal." He turned to face her, and her eyes were soft in the moonlight. "I haven't let anyone into our lives since Sarah died. It was easier that way. Safer. And now you're here, and Lily loves you, and I'm starting to—" He stopped himself. "Starting to what?" Claire asked quietly. "Starting to forget why I built all those walls in the first place." They sat in silence, the weight of his words hanging between them. "I didn't come here looking for this," Claire said finally. "I didn't come here looking for anything except a place to breathe. But then Lily took my hand and you made me terrible coffee, and suddenly I could feel things I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. That's what scares me." "Me too." She reached out and touched his hand, just a brush of fingers, barely there. "But I think some things are worth being scared of." Evan looked at her hand on his, at this woman who had walked away from everything to find something she couldn't name, at the unexpected gift of her presence in his life. "I can't promise you anything," he said. "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is right or wrong or somewhere in between. I'm not asking for promises." "What are you asking for?" Claire thought about it. "Time. Space. The chance to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else." She squeezed his hand. "And maybe, if you're willing, someone to figure it out alongside." It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a commitment. It was something smaller and more fragile, a seed planted in uncertain soil with no guarantee it would grow. But Evan thought about Sarah, about what she would want for him, about the dream that kept fading but left its warmth behind. "Okay," he said, "let's figure it out." Claire leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and they watched the stars wheel overhead in comfortable silence. Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring. Neither of them could predict how this strange arrangement would unfold. But for the first time in 6 years, Evan allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, happiness wasn't a betrayal. Maybe it was just the next chapter, waiting to be written. The morning after their conversation on the porch, Evan woke to the smell of cinnamon and something baking. He lay in bed for a moment, disoriented, trying to remember the last time his house had smelled like anything other than coffee and burnt toast. The answer came to him slowly. It had been Sarah. Sarah used to bake on Sunday mornings while he slept in, filling the cabin with warmth and sweetness. He found Claire in the kitchen, flour dusted across her cheek, pulling a tray of cinnamon rolls from the oven. Lily was perched on a stool beside her, licking frosting from a spoon with the dedication of someone performing important scientific research. "You bake now?" Evan asked, leaning against the doorframe. Claire turned, and he noticed the slight flush on her cheeks. Whether from the oven's heat or something else, he couldn't tell. "I used to, before everything. My grandmother taught me when I was Lily's age." She set the tray on the counter. "I hope you don't mind. I found the ingredients in your pantry." "I didn't know I had ingredients for cinnamon rolls." "You didn't exactly. I improvised." She smiled, and it transformed her whole face, softened the sharp edges, made her look younger. Turns out desperation and creativity make decent substitutes for proper supplies. Lily held up her spoon triumphantly. "Claire says baking is like chemistry, but you get to eat the experiments." "That's one way to look at it." Evan crossed to the coffee maker. Claire had already started a pot and poured himself a cup. "What time did you get up?" "Early. I couldn't sleep." Claire began frosting the rolls with practiced movements. "I kept thinking about what you said last night, about being scared." Evan glanced at Lily, who was now fully absorbed in the frosting bowl and paying them no attention. "And?" he asked quietly. "And I realized I've spent my entire adult life being scared. Scared of failure, scared of not being enough. Scared of what people would think if I slowed down for even a second." She paused, the frosting knife hovering over a roll. "But this is the first time I've been scared of something good, something that might actually matter." Before Evan could respond, his phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up, frowned at the screen. "Everything okay?" Claire asked. "Work. They need me to come in early. Someone called out sick." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry. I know it's Sunday." "Go. Lily and I will be fine." "Are you sure? I don't want to—" "Evan." Claire's voice was firm but gentle. "We'll be fine. I'll teach her how to make pasta from scratch. By the time you get home, you'll have a full Italian meal waiting." Lily's head shot up. "We're making pasta? Real pasta? From scratch?" "If your dad says it's okay." They both looked at him, and Evan felt something warm spread through his chest. This is what it looks like, he thought. A family. This is what it feels like. "Okay," he said, "but save me some cinnamon rolls." The hardware store was quiet for a Sunday, just a handful of customers wandering the aisles, looking for solutions to small domestic problems. Evan worked the register, restocked shelves, helped an elderly man find the right size screws for a cabinet repair. Normal things. Ordinary things. But his mind kept drifting back to the cabin, to Claire's flour-dusted cheek, to the way Lily had looked at her with something close to adoration. "You're distracted today," his coworker Marcus observed during their lunch break. Marcus was 53, divorced twice, and had the kind of weathered wisdom that came from making every mistake in the book and somehow surviving. "Girl trouble?" Evan almost laughed. "Something like that. The mysterious woman renting the cabin next door." "How did you Small town, man. Mrs. Patterson saw a fancy car in your neighbor's driveway. By Tuesday, everyone knew some city woman had shown up out of nowhere." Marcus bit into his sandwich. "Word is she's been spending a lot of time at your place." "It's not what you think." "What do I think?" Evan hesitated. "I don't know. Something scandalous, probably. I think a man who's been alone too long is finally letting someone in." Marcus's eyes were kind. "Nothing scandalous about that. Just human." "She's complicated." "All the good ones are." Marcus crumpled his sandwich wrapper. "Your wife, Sarah, right? She was complicated too, from what I remember, but you figured it out. You made it work." "That was different. We had time. We grew together." Evan stared at his untouched lunch. "Claire is a stranger. I've known her less than a week, and already she's in my kitchen, teaching my daughter to bake, and I'm falling for her?" The word hit Evan like a physical blow. Falling. Was that what this was? This vertigo, this loss of balance, this sense that the ground beneath him had shifted without warning. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know what this is. Does it matter? Marcus stood, brushing crumbs from his shirt. You've been surviving for 6 years, Evan. Maybe it's time to start living again. He left Evan alone with his thoughts and his cold sandwich. When Evan got home that evening, the cabin was transformed. The table was set with mismatched dishes, the only ones he owned, but Claire had arranged them with care, adding wildflowers in a mason jar as a centerpiece. Lily was bouncing with excitement, wearing an apron that was too big for her and had flower handprints all over it. Dad, we made everything ourselves, the pasta and the sauce and the bread and… Breathe, sweetheart, Evan laughed, scooping her up for a hug. Show me. Claire emerged from the kitchen, untying her own apron, one of Sarah's old ones that Evan had kept but never used. Seeing it on her did something complicated to his heart. It's not fancy, Claire said quickly, almost nervously. Restaurant-quality ingredients would have helped, but we worked with what you had. Lily did most of the pasta rolling. She's a natural. I made the noodles flat, Lily announced proudly. Claire said the most important thing is to make them all the same thickness or they cook weird. Dinner was the best meal Evan had eaten in years. The pasta was simple, just butter, garlic, and parmesan, but it was fresh and perfect. The sauce for the bread was rich with tomatoes from a can, elevated somehow by whatever magic Claire had worked. Lily ate more than Evan had ever seen her eat, talking between bites about everything she'd learned. Claire says cooking is like building something, Lily explained. You start with basic pieces and then you put them together in different ways and it becomes something new. That's a good way to think about it, Evan said, meeting Claire's eyes across the table. She also said that when you cook for someone, you're giving them part of yourself. Lily paused, considering. Like when Mom used to make my birthday cake. She said she put extra love in the frosting. The table went quiet. Evan's throat tightened. That's exactly right, Claire said softly. Your mom sounds like she was very wise. She was. Lily's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes were bright. Dad has pictures. Do you want to see? Claire looked at Evan, asking permission. After dinner, he said, if Claire wants to. I'd like that very much. They finished eating and Lily ran to get the photo album while Evan and Claire cleared the dishes. Standing at the sink together, shoulders almost touching, felt strangely intimate. More intimate than the conversation on the porch. More revealing than any confession. You don't have to look at the pictures, Evan said quietly. I know it might be uncomfortable. Meeting the ghost of the woman whose life you've stepped into. Is that what I've done? Stepped into her life? I didn't mean it like that. I know. Claire dried a plate, set it carefully in the cabinet. But it's a fair question, isn't it? Whether I belong here at all. Whether this is real or just displacement. Both of us looking for something we lost and projecting it onto each other. Evan turned off the water. Is that what you think this is? I don't know. I'm trying to be honest about the possibility. She faced him, her expression open in a way he hadn't seen before. I've spent 15 years lying to myself about what I wanted. I don't want to lie about this. What do you want? The question hung between them, heavy and electric. I want to be the person who makes cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings, Claire said slowly. I want to teach a little girl how to cook and watch her face light up when she succeeds. I want to sit on a porch at night and talk about things that matter with someone who actually listens. She paused, and her voice dropped. I want you to look at me the way you looked at me last night, like I might be someone worth knowing. You are someone worth knowing. You barely know me. I know enough. He reached out, almost unconsciously, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I know that you walked away from everything because you wanted something real. I know that my daughter trusts you, and she's the best judge of character I've ever met. I know that when I came home tonight, this place felt more like a home than it has in 6 years. Claire's breath caught. Evan, I found it. Lily's voice rang out from the hallway, and they stepped apart quickly, the moment broken but not forgotten. They looked at the photos together, the three of them on the couch, Lily in the middle with the album on her lap. Sarah smiled out from every page, frozen in moments Evan had almost forgotten. Their wedding day. Lily's birth. A vacation to the beach when Lily was 3, all of them sunburned and laughing. She was beautiful, Claire said. She was. Evan's voice was thick. But more than that, she was kind. She believed in people, saw the best in everyone, even when they couldn't see it themselves. She sounds like Lily. Lily got all her best parts. Lily had been quiet, studying each photo with intense concentration. Now she looked up at Claire with those two wise eyes. "Do you think my mom would have liked you?" Claire's breath caught visibly. I hope so. I'd like to think so." "I think she would." Lily nodded decisively. She liked people who were real. She said fake people were exhausting. A pause. "You're not fake, Claire. You're just sad. But sad is better than fake." Evan felt tears prick his eyes. His daughter, 8 years old, cutting straight to the heart of things the way Sarah always had. "Thank you," Claire whispered. "That means more than you know." Lily yawned hugely, breaking the tension. "Can Claire read to me again tonight?" "If she wants to." "I want to." Claire stood, offering her hand to Lily. "Come on, let's find out what happens in the next chapter." They disappeared down the hall, and Evan sat alone with the photo album, looking at his wife's face. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said quietly to her image. "I don't know if this is right, but I think you'd tell me to try. You always told me to try." Sarah smiled back at him, unchanging, eternal. He closed the album and waited. Claire emerged 30 minutes later, her eyes soft. She fell asleep faster tonight. She was exhausted from all the cooking. "Thank you for everything today. Stop thanking me." She settled onto the couch beside him, close but not touching. "I should be thanking you for sharing her with me, for letting me see those pictures, for not treating me like an intruder in your grief." "You're not an intruder." "What am I then?" Evan considered the question. "I don't know yet, but I want to find out." They sat in silence, the kind that had become familiar between them, comfortable, expectant. "Can I tell you something?" Claire asked finally. "Anything." "I called my lawyer today, while you were at work." She pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself smaller. "The resignation is being processed. The board is scrambling. There are already articles speculating about why I left, whether I was fired, whether there's a scandal." "Is there a scandal?" "No, just a woman who couldn't breathe anymore." She laughed bitterly. "But that's not a satisfying narrative, is it? There has to be drama, intrigue, a fall from grace. What did your lawyer say?" "That I should come back, issue a statement, control the narrative before it controls me." She shook her head. "He doesn't understand that the narrative is exactly what I was running from. The constant performance, the endless management of how the world perceives me." "So what are you going to do?" "Nothing." The word came out like a release, like setting down a weight she'd carried too long. "For the first time in my life, I'm going to do absolutely nothing. I'm going to let the story be whatever people make it, and I'm going to stay here and make cinnamon rolls and teach Lily how to cook and figure out who I am when no one's watching." "That sounds terrifying." "It is." She looked at him, and her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears or might have been relief. "It's also the first thing that's felt right in years." Evan reached over and took her hand. She interlaced her fingers with his, and they sat there in the quiet of the cabin, listening to the night sounds through the open window. "My parents are coming next week," he said. Claire's hand tensed in his. "What?" "They visit every few months to see Lily. They're driving up from Phoenix." "I should go, before they get here. I don't want to complicate." "Claire," he squeezed her hand, "I want them to meet you. You want them to meet the strange woman who showed up at your door with a suitcase and moved into your guest room? I want them to meet the woman who fixed my daughter's solar system and made her laugh and reminded me what it feels like to hope." The words hung between them, more honest than he'd intended. "They'll have questions," Claire said quietly. "They will. I don't have answers for most of them." He turned to face her. "But I'm tired of waiting until I have everything figured out before I let myself live. Sarah used to tell me I spent too much time planning and not enough time doing. Maybe she was right. What if I'm not what they expected for you?" "You're not what anyone expected. That's what makes you interesting." Claire's laugh was surprised, almost disbelieving. You're really not what I expected either, Evan Brooks. Good. We can be unexpected together. The week passed in a blur of small moments that accumulated into something larger than their sum. Claire continued to cook meals, transforming Evan's sparse pantry into food that actually tasted like someone cared about it. Lily followed her around like a devoted apprentice, absorbing everything Claire taught her with the eagerness of a child discovering a new world. Evan went to work, came home, and found himself looking forward to evening in a way he hadn't in years. The three of them would eat dinner together, talk about their days, then sit on the porch while Lily counted stars and Claire pointed out constellations she'd memorized. It felt, increasingly, like a family, like something Evan had lost and never thought he'd find again. But underneath the comfort, tension was building. Evan could feel it in the way Claire checked her phone obsessively, then put it away with barely concealed frustration. In the way she sometimes stared out the window with an expression he couldn't read, longing, maybe, or fear. In the late-night sounds of her pacing the guest room when she thought everyone was asleep. On Thursday, 3 days before his parents' visit, he found her sitting on the porch steps at 2 a.m, wrapped in a blanket and staring at the sky. Couldn't sleep? He asked, settling beside her. Story of my life. She didn't look at him. I used to work through the night. Emails at midnight, calls at 3 a.m., meetings across time zones. My body doesn't know how to rest anymore. What are you thinking about? Everything. Nothing. She pulled the blanket tighter. My assistant called today. The board scheduled an emergency meeting for next week. They want to announce my replacement before the stock drops any further. That's fast. That's business. I'm already yesterday's news. In a month, no one will remember I was ever there. Her laugh was hollow. 15 years of building something, and it'll be erased like I never existed. Is that what you're afraid of? Being forgotten? Claire was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was small. I'm afraid that being forgotten is exactly what I deserve. That I spent my whole life chasing something worthless, and now I'm going to disappear and no one will notice because no one ever really knew me in the first place. Evan let her words settle before responding. Can I tell you what I see? What? I see a woman who walked away from everything she was supposed to want because she finally realized she wanted something real. That takes courage. That takes more strength than staying and pretending never did. Or it takes cowardice, running away instead of fixing what was broken. Maybe. He looked at her profile, sharp against the moonlight. But you're not running anymore, are you? You're here. You're building something new. That's not cowardice. That's starting over. Claire finally turned to face him, and her eyes were glistening. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken to be anything other than what I was? Then we'll figure it out together. He reached over and took her hand, and she didn't pull away. Lily and I are pretty good at broken things. We've had a lot of practice. A tear slipped down her cheek. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you or Lily or any of this kindness. That's not for you to decide. He brushed the tear away with his thumb, and the gesture felt natural, inevitable. You showed up at my door asking for something real. I'm trying to give you that. Will you let me? Claire closed her eyes, and another tear fell. Yes, she whispered. Yes. They sat there until dawn started to lighten the eastern sky, not speaking, just existing together in the quiet. When the first birds began to sing, Claire leaned her head on his shoulder, and Evan felt something click into place, something that had been misaligned for 6 years finally settling where it belonged. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something earlier, more fragile, the possibility of love, waiting to see if it would be nurtured or neglected. Evan chose nurture. Friday brought a change in the weather, dark clouds rolling in from the mountains, the smell of rain heavy in the air. Lily was restless, bouncing between activities, unable to settle on anything. When are Grandma and Grandpa coming? She asked for the 10th time. Sunday morning. Evan looked up from his laptop, where he was paying bills and trying not to panic at the numbers. 2 more days. Are they going to like Claire? I think so. Why? Lily chewed her lip, a habit she'd picked up from him. I want them to like her. I want her to stay. Lily, Evan set the laptop aside. Claire is just visiting. We don't know how long she'll be here. But I want her to stay forever. Lily's voice cracked, and suddenly she wasn't bouncing anymore. She was standing very still, her eyes too bright. I want her to be here when I wake up and when I go to sleep, and I want her to teach me more things, and I want... She dissolved into tears, and Evan was across the room in seconds, pulling her into his arms. Hey, sweetheart, it's okay. It's not okay. The words came out muffled against his chest. I love her, Dad. I love her, and she's going to leave like Mom did, and I don't want her to go. Evan's heart cracked open. He held his daughter tighter, rocking her gently, not knowing what to say because he didn't have any answers. He couldn't promise Claire would stay. He couldn't promise anything. Lily? Claire's voice came from the doorway, soft and uncertain. Can I... Evan nodded, and Claire crossed to them, kneeling beside the couch. Lily lifted her tear-stained face and looked at her. Are you going to leave? Lily asked directly. Tell me the truth. Are you going to go away? Claire's expression was raw, unguarded. I don't know, she said honestly. I don't have a plan, Lily. I don't know what comes next. But I know that right now, in this moment, I don't want to be anywhere else in the world. That's not the same as staying. No, it's not. Claire reached out and gently wiped a tear from Lily's cheek. But here's what I can promise. I will not disappear without saying goodbye. I will not leave without talking to you first. Whatever happens, you will always know where I am and how to find me. Is that enough? Lily considered this with the gravity of a judge weighing evidence. Do you love my dad? The question hung in the air, electrified. Claire's eyes flicked to Evan, then back to Lily. I don't know that either. I know I care about him. I know he makes me feel safe in a way I've never felt before. Is that love? Maybe. Maybe it's the beginning of love. Or maybe it's just two lonely people finding each other at the right time. That sounds like love, Lily said with the confidence of an 8-year-old who had read many fairy tales. Claire smiled, a real smile despite the tears in her own eyes. Maybe it does. The storm broke that evening, thunder rolling across the mountains, lightning illuminating the sky in brilliant flashes. They ate dinner by candlelight because the power had gone out, and somehow the darkness made everything feel more intimate, more real. Tell me about your family, Claire said to Evan over the flickering flames. What should I expect on Sunday? Evan groaned. My parents are... a lot. A lot how? My mother hasn't stopped hoping I'll move back to Phoenix since Sarah died. She thinks this cabin is depressing, and I'm wasting my life in the middle of nowhere. My father is quieter, but he has opinions about everything I do, and he expresses them through strategic silences and disappointed sighs. They sound delightful. They mean well. They just have very specific ideas about what happiness looks like, and I don't fit any of them. What do they think happiness looks like? A good job, a nice house, someone to take care of me and Lily, stability, security? He shrugged. All the things I used to want, before Sarah got sick, before I realized that none of it matters if you're not actually living. What do you want now? The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. Evan stared at the candle flame, watching it dance and flicker. I want Lily to be happy, he said finally. I want to stop feeling like I'm just surviving and start feeling like I'm actually present in my own life. I want to wake up in the morning and feel something other than tired. He looked at her across the table. I want to stop being afraid of wanting things. What things? This. He gestured at the space between them. You. Whatever this is. I want to see where it goes without being paralyzed by the fear that it'll end badly. Everything ends, Claire said quietly. That's not pessimism. It's just reality. I know, but Sarah used to say that endings aren't the point, the middle is the point, the moments that make up a life. He reached across the table and she met him halfway. I've spent 6 years waiting for something I couldn't name, and then you showed up at my door with a suitcase, and suddenly waiting felt like the wrong strategy. What's the right strategy? I have no idea. But I think it starts with being honest about what I want. And I want you to stay, not forever. I can't ask for that. But for now. For the middle. For whatever comes next. Claire's hand tightened in his. I want that too. Lightning flashed, illuminating her face. The hope and fear and uncertainty all mixed together. Thunder followed, shaking the cabin walls. Your parents are going to hate me, she said. Probably. I'm a stranger who moved into your house. I have no job, no plan, no clear explanation for why I'm here. All true. They're going to think I'm taking advantage of you. Also possible. And you're okay with that? Evan thought about it. I'm okay with them thinking whatever they need to think. What matters is what we know is true. And what I know is that for the first time in 6 years, I feel like I'm awake. You did that. I don't care if my parents understand it. The power came back on, sudden and jarring, flooding the cabin with light. They blinked at each other, the spell broken but not forgotten. I should check on Lily, Claire said, standing. Make sure the storm didn't scare her. She's usually fine with storms. Sarah used to tell her they were just the sky singing. That's beautiful. That was Sarah. He smiled sadly. She had a way of making everything less frightening. Claire paused at the hallway entrance. Evan? Yeah? Thank you for not making me less frightened, for letting me be scared and wanting me anyway. She disappeared before he could respond, and Evan sat alone with the flickering aftermath of the storm, wondering how his life had changed so completely in less than 2 weeks. Saturday was chaos, cleaning the cabin, preparing the guest room for his parents, trying to explain to Lily that she needed to be on her best behavior while simultaneously telling her to act natural. Claire moved through the preparation like a shadow, helping without being asked, anticipating needs before they were spoken. You don't have to do all this, Evan told her as she scrubbed the kitchen counters for the 3rd time. I want to make a good impression. They're going to judge you no matter what. A clean kitchen won't change that. Maybe not, but at least they can't say I'm a slob. She scrubbed harder. I've never cared what anyone thought of me before. That's the irony. I've been on magazine covers, I've given keynote speeches to thousands of people, and none of it made me nervous. But the thought of your parents looking at me and finding me lacking, they're not going to find you lacking. You don't know that. I know you. He stilled her hand, taking the sponge from her grip. And I know that anyone who takes the time to actually see you will see someone extraordinary. What if they don't take the time? Then that's their loss, not yours. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You really believe that? I really do. Claire's phone rang, cutting through the moment. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. Who is it? Evan asked. My mother. The word came out strangled. I haven't talked to her in 3 years. Are you going to answer? The phone kept ringing. Claire stared at it like it might explode. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know. The ringing stopped. Voicemail. 3 years? Evan asked gently. She didn't approve of my choices. My career, my relationships, my entire life, basically. Claire set the phone down like it burned her. When I became CEO, she said I'd sold my soul for success, that I'd become everything she'd raised me not to be. Was she right? Yes? The admission seemed to cost Claire something. She was right, and I hated her for it. So I stopped calling, stopped answering, told myself I didn't need her approval anymore. Do you want to call her back? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. She laughed, but it came out broken. A week ago, I ran a company worth billions. I had answers for everything. Now I can't even decide whether to call my mother. Maybe that's progress. How is that progress? Because the person who ran that company wouldn't have hesitated. She would have had a strategy, an angle, a way to manage the conversation for maximum advantage. The fact that you don't know what to do means you're thinking about it differently, thinking about it as a person instead of a position. Claire stared at him. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just good at pointing out what I see. He picked up her phone and held it out to her. Whatever you decide, I'm here. She took the phone slowly, looked at the missed call notification, looked at him. Not today, she said finally, but soon, when I know what to say. That's fair. Is it? Or am I just being a coward again? There's no deadline on making peace with your family. Take the time you need. Claire pocketed the phone, and some of the tension drained from her shoulders. Your parents are going to be so confused by me. Good. They could use some confusion in their lives. That night, after Lily was asleep, they sat on the porch one more time. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and cool, the stars sharper than they'd been in weeks. Tomorrow everything changes, Claire said. Tomorrow is just another day. You don't believe that. No, he admitted. I don't, but I'm trying to. She leaned against him, and he put his arm around her, and they watched the stars wheel overhead in their eternal, indifferent dance. Whatever happens, Claire whispered, thank you for this week. Thank you for letting me be scared and confused and completely without a plan. Thank you for seeing me as a person when I'd forgotten how to be one. Thank you for showing up, Evan replied. Thank you for knocking on my door and refusing to let me keep hiding from life. Is that what you were doing? Hiding? I thought I was protecting myself, protecting Lily. But looking back, I think I was just afraid of wanting something and losing it again. And now? He thought about the question carefully. Now I'm still afraid, but I'm more afraid of never trying than I am of failing. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. They sat in silence, watching a shooting star arc across the sky. Make a wish, Claire said. Evan closed his eyes. When he opened them, Claire was looking at him with an expression that made his breath catch. What did you wish for? She asked. I can't tell you. It won't come true. That's a superstition? Maybe, but I'd rather not risk it. Claire smiled, that real smile, the one that transformed her whole face. Fair enough. They stayed on the porch until the cold drove them inside, and even then, Evan didn't want the night to end. Tomorrow his parents would arrive, bringing with them all the complications and judgments and difficult questions he wasn't ready to answer. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be, and for the first time in 6 years that felt like enough. The sound of tires on gravel came at exactly 10:15 Sunday morning, just as Claire was pulling a fresh batch of muffins from the oven. Evan watched her freeze, the oven mitts still on her hands, her face a mask of carefully controlled panic. They're here, Lily announced from the window, bouncing on her toes. Grandma's wearing her blue dress. That means she's in a good mood. How do you know that? Evan asked. She only wears blue when she's happy. When she's mad, she wears gray. Lily turned to Claire with the solemnity of a war strategist. She's not wearing gray. That's good. Claire managed a weak smile. Thanks for the intel. Evan crossed to her and gently removed the oven mitts from her hands. Breathe, he said quietly. They're just people. They're your parents. They're the people who raised you and loved Sarah and have every right to think I'm a disaster waiting to happen. They might think that. They might not. Either way, you've faced boardrooms full of hostile shareholders. You can handle 2 retirees from Phoenix. Hostile shareholders, I understood. Family is different. The car door slammed outside and Evan heard his mother's voice, that particular tone she used when she was assessing something. The garden looks better than last time. Did he finally hire someone? No, Mom, Evan muttered under his breath. I just had help. He squeezed Claire's hand once, then went to open the front door. His mother, Barbara Brooks, was already halfway up the path, her husband Richard trailing behind with a suitcase in each hand. Barbara was 63, silver-haired, and possessed of the kind of energy that made everyone around her feel slightly exhausted. She was wearing blue, as Lily had noted, and her smile was genuine as she spotted her granddaughter in the doorway. There's my girl! Barbara swept past Evan to scoop Lily into a hug. You've grown at least 2 inches since I saw you last. What is your father feeding you? Claire's been cooking, Lily said brightly. She makes really good pasta and muffins. She made muffins this morning. Barbara's smile flickered, almost imperceptibly. Claire? She's inside. Lily grabbed her grandmother's hand. Come meet her. You're going to like her. She's really nice and she knows about stars and she helped me fix my solar system project. Evan watched his mother's face cycle through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been concern before settling into a carefully neutral expression. Well, Barbara said, I suppose I should meet this Claire then. Richard had reached the porch, slightly out of breath from the suitcases. He was a quiet man, lean and weathered, with eyes that noticed everything and a mouth that rarely commented on what he saw. He nodded at Evan in greeting. "Son, Dad, good drive?" Traffic through Flagstaff, construction. Richard's eyes drifted past Evan to the interior of the cabin. "Lily mentioned someone's been staying here?" "Yeah, it's a bit of a story. Most things worth knowing are." They entered the cabin together, and Evan felt the moment his mother laid eyes on Claire. It was like watching two weather systems collide. Claire standing by the kitchen counter, shoulders squared, chin lifted, every inch the CEO she'd been trained to be, and Barbara frozen in the entryway, taking in everything from Claire's expensive haircut to her uncertain smile. "Mom, Dad," Evan said into the silence, "this is Claire Monroe. Claire, these are my parents, Barbara and Richard." Claire stepped forward, hand extended. "It's wonderful to meet you. Evan and Lily have told me so much about you." Barbara shook her hand with the precision of someone evaluating a business proposal. "I wish I could say the same, but this is the first I'm hearing of you." "Mom," Evan warned. "What?" "I'm just saying. A week ago my son was living alone with my granddaughter, and now there's a woman making muffins in his kitchen. A mother has questions." "Fair enough." Claire's voice was steady, but Evan could see the tension in her jaw. "What would you like to know?" Barbara opened her mouth, but Richard spoke first. "Those muffins smell good. Mind if I try one before the interrogation starts?" The tension broke slightly. Claire laughed, a nervous sound but genuine. "Of course. They're blueberry. Lily picked the berries yesterday from a bush near the creek." "I picked a lot," Lily confirmed. "My fingers turned purple. Look." She held up her hands, which were indeed still faintly stained. Richard took a muffin and bit into it with the deliberate appreciation of a man who understood the value of good food. "Excellent," he pronounced. "Barbara, try one." "I don't need a muffin to form an opinion." "No, but it might improve your mood." The look Barbara gave her husband could have curdled milk, but she accepted a muffin anyway. The first bite seemed to soften something in her expression. Not much, but enough. "Fine," she admitted. "They're good." "Thank you." Claire's shoulders dropped slightly. "Should we sit? I imagine you have a lot of questions, and I'd rather answer them than have everyone standing around feeling awkward." They settled in the living room, Barbara and Richard on the couch, Evan in the armchair, Claire perched on its arm beside him. Lily sat on the floor with a book, but Evan knew she was listening to every word. "So," Barbara began, "who exactly are you, Claire Monroe?" Claire took a breath. "Until about 2 weeks ago, I was the CEO of Vance Technologies. I resigned and drove here looking for somewhere quiet to think. Evan and I met when I rented the cabin next door." Barbara's eyebrows rose. "Vance Technologies, the software company?" "Among other things, yes. I've read about you." Barbara's tone was unreadable. "You were on the cover of Forbes last year. Something about being the youngest woman to lead a Fortune 500 company. That was me. And now you're making muffins in my son's kitchen?" "Mom," Evan interjected. "It's not—" "I'm asking her, Evan. I want to understand." Barbara's eyes never left Claire. "What's a woman like you doing in a place like this, with a man like my son?" "What do you mean, a man like your son?" "I mean no offense to Evan, but he's a single father working at a hardware store in the middle of nowhere. You're a multimillionaire CEO. These worlds don't usually collide." Claire was quiet for a moment, and Evan could see her choosing her words carefully. "You're right, they don't usually collide, but I wasn't looking for someone from my world. I was running from it." She glanced at Evan, and something passed between them, reassurance maybe, or solidarity. "I came here because I was exhausted and empty, and I'd forgotten what it felt like to be a real person instead of a job title. Evan and Lily reminded me." "So you're using my son for some kind of therapeutic retreat?" "Barbara," Richard said quietly. "No, it's a fair question." Claire leaned forward, meeting Barbara's gaze directly. "I understand how this looks. Rich woman shows up out of nowhere, inserts herself into your son's life, plays house for a few weeks before moving on to the next distraction. I'd be suspicious too." "So what's the truth?" "The truth is that I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a 5-year plan for the first time in my adult life. I don't know if I'm going to stay here forever or leave tomorrow, but I know that your son is one of the kindest, most genuine people I've ever met, and your granddaughter is extraordinary, and being here with them makes me feel more alive than I've felt in years." She paused. "Is that using them?" "Maybe, but I'm trying to give as much as I take. I'm trying to be real, even though I've forgotten how." The room was silent. Even Lily had stopped pretending to read. Barbara studied Claire for a long moment, her expression inscrutable. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a short, sharp sound that held no humor. "You know what? I believe you." "You do?" "I've built a career on reading people. You're not lying. You're terrified and confused and completely out of your depth, but you're not lying." Barbara leaned back on the couch. "That doesn't mean I approve of this situation, but at least you're honest about it." "Thank you, I think." "Don't thank me yet. I have more questions." The interrogation continued through lunch, a meal Claire had prepared in advance, knowing she'd need something to offer. Barbara asked about Claire's family, her background, her plans for the future. Claire answered everything with the same careful honesty, admitting when she didn't know something, refusing to pretend certainty she didn't feel. Richard said little, but Evan caught him watching Claire with an expression that might have been respect. His father had always valued authenticity over polish, substance over presentation. Claire, stripped of her corporate armor, seemed to be passing whatever test Richard had silently constructed. After lunch, Barbara announced she was taking Lily for a walk to the creek. "We have grandmother-granddaughter things to discuss," she said, in a tone that made it clear this was not negotiable. Lily went willingly enough, casting one last glance at Claire before disappearing out the door. "Be nice, Grandma," she said. "I like her." "I'm always nice," Barbara replied, which was demonstrably untrue but went unchallenged. That left Evan, Claire, and Richard in the cabin, surrounded by the debris of lunch. "I'll clean up," Claire offered, already gathering plates. "Sit down," Richard said. It wasn't a request. "You've been performing all morning. Take a break." Claire hesitated, then sank back onto the couch. Richard moved to the kitchen and began loading the dishwasher with the practiced efficiency of a man who had done this 10,000 times. "You're not what I expected," Richard said over his shoulder. "What did you expect?" "Someone smoother. Someone who had all the answers." He rinsed a plate. "Someone trying to sell us something." "I don't have anything to sell. Not anymore." "No, you don't." Richard turned off the water and dried his hands slowly. "My wife is protective of Evan. She has been since Sarah died. She thinks he needs someone to take care of him, someone stable and predictable. She's not wrong. He does need support. But she doesn't understand that predictable isn't what he needs. He needs someone who challenges him, someone who makes him feel something other than tired." "You've known me for 3 hours?" "I've been watching you for 3 hours. There's a difference." Richard returned to the living room and settled into the armchair Evan had vacated. "You're scared. You're out of your element. You have no idea if this is going to work or blow up in your face. But you're here anyway. You're trying anyway. That tells me more than any resume." Evan, who had been standing silently by the window, finally spoke. "Dad, I appreciate you trying to help, but I'm not trying to help. I'm making an observation." Richard looked at his son with those sharp, quiet eyes. "You've been sleepwalking through life for 6 years, Evan, doing what needs to be done, taking care of Lily, surviving. But you haven't been living. You haven't been happy." He nodded toward Claire. "She makes you happy. I can see it in your face. I saw it the moment you opened the door this morning. It's complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. Your mother and I have been married for 41 years. You think that wasn't complicated?" "I know it was. I grew up in that house." Richard laughed, a rare sound, rusty from disuse. "Fair point. But here's what I'm trying to say. Don't let the complications scare you off. Don't let your mother's questions or the world's expectations or your own fear convince you that this isn't worth pursuing. If you feel something real, hold on to it. Those feelings don't come around often." Claire's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Mr. Brooks." "Richard? Richard, thank you." "Don't thank me. Just don't hurt my son." His voice was gentle but firm. "He's been through enough. If you're going to leave, leave clean. Don't drag it out. Don't make promises you can't keep. He deserves better than that. I know he does. Good. Then we understand each other. The afternoon passed more easily after that. Barbara returned from her walk with Lily, both of them carrying wildflowers and wearing matching expressions of contentment. Whatever grandmother-granddaughter discussion had occurred by the creek, it seemed to have softened Barbara's edges. Lily tells me you've been teaching her about constellations, Barbara said to Claire over coffee. She's a fast learner. She memorized the major ones in 2 nights. Sarah used to do that with her, before she got sick. Barbara's voice caught slightly on her daughter-in-law's name. She'd take Lily out to the porch, and they'd make up stories about the stars. Lily told me, she said her mother thought Orion was a lonely hunter looking for friends. Claire smiled softly. We've been adding to the mythology. Now he has a companion, a woman who got lost in the sky and decided to stay. Barbara looked at Claire for a long moment, and something in her expression shifted. Not warmth exactly, but an absence of hostility. Sarah would have liked you, Barbara said finally. I'd like to think so. She always said Evan needed someone who could keep up with him, someone who wouldn't let him disappear into his own head. Barbara sipped her coffee. You don't seem like the type who lets people disappear. I've done enough disappearing for both of us. I'd rather stay present. The evening brought dinner, a collaborative effort that somehow involved all 5 of them in the small kitchen, bumping elbows and arguing about seasoning and laughing at Lily's attempts to help with increasingly elaborate tasks. By the time they sat down to eat, something had shifted in the atmosphere. The tension hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something more manageable, more navigable. After dinner, Evan found himself alone with his mother on the porch, while Claire read to Lily and Richard dozed in the armchair. I still have concerns, Barbara said, gazing out at the darkening mountains. I know you do. She's going to get restless. Women like her don't stay in places like this. They need stimulation, challenge, something to conquer. You can't provide that. Maybe she doesn't want to be conquered anymore. Maybe. Or maybe she just needs to catch her breath before diving back into the life she left. Barbara turned to face him. I'm not saying she's a bad person, Evan. I'm saying she's a complicated person in a complicated situation, and you've never been good at complicated. I've been raising a daughter alone for 6 years. I've gotten better at complicated. That's different. That's obligation, duty. This is choice. This is risk. Barbara's voice softened. I don't want to see you hurt again. Losing Sarah nearly destroyed you. If you let this woman in and she leaves, then I'll survive. Just like I survived before. Evan met his mother's eyes. I know you're trying to protect me. I appreciate it. But I've spent 6 years being safe, Mom. I've spent 6 years not taking risks, not letting anyone in, not allowing myself to want anything beyond what I already had. And you know what? It wasn't living. It was just existing. Existing kept you going. Existing kept me functional. It didn't make me happy. He looked back toward the cabin, where light spilled from the windows, and he could hear Lily's voice asking Claire a question. She makes me want to try. She makes me remember what it felt like to hope for something. I can't promise it's going to work out, but I can promise that not trying would be worse than failing. Barbara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. You sound like your father. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. She reached over and squeezed his hand. I'm still going to worry. That's my job. But I'll try to worry quieter. That's all I ask. They sat together in the darkness, mother and son, watching the stars emerge one by one. The rest of the visit passed without incident. Barbara continued to observe Claire with a critical eye, but her questions became less pointed, her comments less barbed. Richard engaged Claire in long conversations about engineering and business, drawing out parts of herself she'd been trying to leave behind, helping her see that she didn't have to abandon everything she'd been, just reshape it into something healthier. On their last morning, as Richard loaded the suitcases into the car, Barbara pulled Claire aside. I still don't entirely understand what you're doing here, Barbara said quietly. But I can see that you're trying. That matters. Thank you. Don't thank me, just be careful. With his heart. With Lily's. They've both lost enough. I know. I'm trying to add, not subtract. Barbara studied her for a moment, then nodded once, a small gesture, but significant. Good. That's all I needed to hear. Lily hugged her grandparents fiercely, extracting promises of phone calls and video chats and another visit soon. Evan walked them to the car, enduring his mother's final warnings and his father's firm handshake. She's good for you, Richard said quietly, so only Evan could hear. Don't let your fear ruin it. I'm trying. Try harder. The car pulled away, and Evan stood in the driveway until it disappeared around the bend, leaving behind only dust and silence. Claire came up beside him, slipping her hand into his. How bad was it? Not as bad as I expected. Your mother still doesn't trust me. My mother doesn't trust anyone. It's her default setting. He turned to face her. But my father likes you. That's worth more than it seems. He's a good man. He is. He just doesn't talk much. Evan smiled. He told me not to let fear ruin this. Smart advice. Yeah, I'm trying to follow it. They walked back to the cabin together, hand in hand, and for a moment everything felt possible. The visit was over, the interrogation had ended, and they had survived. Whatever came next, they would face it together. But Evan should have known that life rarely stayed simple for long. The call came that night, just as they were finishing dinner. Claire's phone buzzed on the counter, and she glanced at the screen with an expression that made Evan's stomach drop. What is it? My old assistant, Michelle. Claire stared at the phone like it might bite her. She's called 3 times today. I've been ignoring her. Maybe you should answer. Maybe. But Claire made no move to pick up the phone. It rang twice more, then went to voicemail. A minute later, a text appeared. Claire, please call me. It's urgent. Something's happening with the company, and you need to know. Something's happening, Claire read aloud. Her face had gone pale. That can't be good. Are you going to call her back? I don't know. I don't know if I want to know. She set the phone down, her hands trembling slightly. I left that world behind. I don't owe them anything. No, but you might owe yourself the truth. Claire looked at him, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes. The part of her that wanted to stay hidden versus the part that needed to know what she was hiding from. Will you stay with me? She asked. While I call? Of course. She picked up the phone and dialed. Evan watched her face as she listened, watched the color drain from her cheeks, watched her free hand grip the counter like she might fall without it. I see, she said finally. No, I understand. Yes, I'll think about it. Thank you, Michelle. She hung up and stood very still. Claire? Evan moved toward her. What happened? The board. Her voice was distant, shocked. They've been voting on the merger I resigned over, the one that would destroy 20,000 jobs. She looked at him with hollow eyes. They're going to push it through. Without me there to stop them, there's no one left who cares about the human cost. Marcus Phillips is taking over as interim CEO, and he's always been in favor of the merger. What does that mean? It means everything I built is about to be dismantled. Every protection I put in place, every policy designed to help employees, every program I fought for, gone. Because I wasn't there to defend them. Claire, that's not your fault. You needed to leave. Did I? Her voice cracked. Or did I just take the easy way out? Run away instead of staying and fighting? She pressed her palms against her eyes. 20,000 people, Evan. 20,000 people are going to lose their jobs because I couldn't handle the pressure anymore. You don't know that. You can't take responsibility for decisions other people make. But I can take responsibility for not being there to stop them. She dropped her hands and her eyes were wet. I thought I was escaping. I thought I was choosing myself for once. But maybe I was just being a coward. You're not a coward. Then what am I? She gestured around the cabin. I'm standing in a kitchen making muffins while the company I spent 15 years building destroys itself. I'm playing house while real people lose their livelihoods. How is that not cowardice? Evan didn't have an answer. He could see the conflict tearing her apart, the part of her that had found peace here warring with the part that still felt responsible for the world she'd left behind. What do you want to do? He asked quietly. I don't know. She sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. Michelle said the board is meeting again on Friday, the final vote. If I came back, if I made my case, there's a chance I could sway them. Some of them respected me. Some of them might listen. And if they don't, then at least I tried. She looked up at him, and her eyes were full of anguish. But if I go back, I don't know if I can come back here. To this life. To you. The pull of that world, it's strong, Evan. It swallowed me once. It could swallow me again. Is that what you're afraid of? I'm afraid of everything right now. She laughed bitterly. I'm afraid of going back and losing myself again. I'm afraid of staying and letting people suffer because of my choices. I'm afraid of hurting you and Lily by leaving. I'm afraid of hurting myself by staying. She shook her head. There's no right answer. Evan knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. What does your heart tell you? My heart is confused. What does it want, though? If you strip away the fear and the guilt and the obligation, what do you actually want? Claire was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I want to stay here. I want to keep making muffins and teaching Lily about stars and sitting on the porch with you at night. I want this life. I want you. But I don't know if I can live with myself if I let those people down, if I run and hide while the world I built burns. She squeezed his hands. Does that make sense? Can you understand? Yes. He felt his heart breaking, but he kept his voice steady. I understand completely. So what do I do? Evan thought about his father's words, about not letting fear ruin something real, about the difference between surviving and living. You go, he said, and the words tasted like ash in his mouth. You go back and you fight for those people. You do what only you can do. And us? Us will still be here. When you're done, if you still want this life, you know where to find us. Claire's eyes filled with tears. What if I can't come back? What if I get pulled in again? Then we'll know the truth about what you really wanted. He cupped her face in his hands. I'd rather you leave and discover who you are than stay and spend the rest of your life wondering. I can't ask you to give up that part of yourself for me. You could ask. I might say yes. I know. That's why I won't ask. She kissed him then, sudden and fierce and tasting of salt tears. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with something that might have been gratitude or might have been grief. Friday, she said. The board meeting is Friday. I'll go back Wednesday, prepare my case, fight for what I believe in. And then you'll decide. And then I'll decide. They held each other in the dim kitchen, neither of them sure what the morning would bring, both of them knowing that nothing would be the same after tonight. The future stretched before them, uncertain and frightening. But they faced it together, at least for now. The morning Claire left was gray and still, the kind of weather that felt like the world was holding its breath. Evan stood on the porch with Lily beside him, watching Claire load her single suitcase into the sleek black car that had sat unused in the neighboring driveway for nearly 3 weeks. 3 weeks. It felt like both a lifetime and the blink of an eye. You're coming back, right? Lily's voice was small, uncertain in a way Evan hadn't heard since the months after Sarah died. You promised you wouldn't leave without saying goodbye, but you didn't promise you'd come back. Claire knelt in front of Lily, taking her small hands in hers. I can't promise that, sweetheart. I wish I could, but I've learned that promises you can't keep hurt more than honest uncertainty. That's not fair. No, it's not. Claire's eyes glistened. But here's what I can tell you. I want to come back, more than I've ever wanted anything, and I'm going to fight as hard as I can to make that happen. Well, what if fighting isn't enough? Then at least I'll know I tried. Claire pulled Lily into a hug, and Evan watched his daughter cling to this woman who had walked into their lives and changed everything. You are extraordinary, Lily Brooks. Whatever happens, don't ever forget that. I don't want you to go. I know. I don't want to go either. Claire pulled back, wiping Lily's cheeks with her thumbs. But sometimes we have to do hard things. Your dad taught me that. Lily sniffled, then straightened her shoulders with the resolve of someone much older. Okay, but you better call every day. And video chat. Dad says the reception is bad here, but we can go into town where it's better. Every day. Claire agreed. I promise that much. Lily nodded once, then turned and walked into the cabin without looking back. Evan watched her go, his heart cracking at the rigid set of her small shoulders, the way she was trying so hard to be brave. She's stronger than she looks, Claire said quietly. She's had to be. Evan turned to face her. Are you sure about this? No, I'm not sure about anything. Claire stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, see the fine lines of exhaustion around her eyes. But you were right. I have to try. Those people, they trusted me. They built their lives around a company I promised to protect. I can't abandon them without a fight. I know. And I'm not abandoning you either. She took his hands, her grip fierce. This isn't running away, Evan. This is running toward something. Do you understand the difference? I'm trying to. I spent my whole life running toward success, power, recognition. Now I'm running toward responsibility, toward integrity, toward becoming someone I can be proud of. She paused. And then, when that's done, I'm running back here, back to you. If you can. If I can. Her voice broke slightly. But I need you to believe that I want to. I need you to hold on to that while I'm gone. I'll try. That's all I ask. She kissed him then, slow and deep, pouring everything she couldn't say into the press of her lips against his. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set with determination. Wednesday to Friday, she said. 3 days. I'll know by Friday night if I succeeded or failed. Either way, I'll call you the moment it's over. I'll be waiting. I know you will. She smiled, but it was bittersweet. That's one of the things I love about you, Evan Brooks. You wait. You're patient. You don't push or demand or force things to happen on your timeline. You just trust that things will work out. Do they? Work out? I don't know, but I'm starting to believe they might. She got in the car, started the engine, and rolled down the window for one last look. Take care of Lily, she said, always. And take care of yourself. Don't disappear into the hardware store and forget to feel things. I'll try. That word again. She smiled through her tears. Goodbye, Evan. Goodbye, Claire. The car pulled away, kicking up gravel, and Evan stood on the porch until it disappeared around the bend, until the sound of the engine faded into the morning silence, until there was nothing left but the gray sky and the empty driveway and the weight of everything he couldn't control. Inside, he found Lily on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. She's gone, Lily said flatly. For now. What if for now becomes forever? Evan sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. Then we'll survive. We always do. I'm tired of surviving. Lily's voice was muffled against his chest. I want to be happy. I want things to stay good instead of always changing. I know, sweetheart. I want that too. So why does everything keep leaving? The question cut deep, deeper than Lily probably knew. Evan thought about Sarah, about all the ways life had taught his daughter that love was temporary, that happiness was a visitor that never stayed long. Not everything leaves, he said finally. I'm still here. I'm never leaving. Promise? Promise. What about Claire? Evan hesitated. I can't promise for Claire. Only she can do that. But I can promise that whatever happens, we'll be okay. You and me. We've gotten through hard things before. I don't want to get through hard things. I want easy things, nice things. I know, me too. They sat together in the quiet cabin, father and daughter, holding on to each other while the world outside continued its indifferent spin. The first day without Claire was the hardest. Evan moved through his routines, making breakfast, getting Lily ready for school, driving the 20 minutes to the bus stop, but everything felt muted, like the color had been drained from the world. At work, Marcus noticed. She left, didn't she? Marcus said during their lunch break. The woman from the cabin. For a few days. She has something she needs to handle back in the city. And you're worried she won't come back. Is it that obvious? Brother, it's written all over your face. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. But here's the thing. If she's worth keeping, she'll find her way back. If she's not, better to find out now than in 6 months when you're even more attached. That's not as comforting as you think it is. Wasn't meant to be comforting, just realistic. Marcus shrugged. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. It's the only way to survive this life. That night, Evan's phone rang just as he was putting Lily to bed. Claire's name on the screen made his heart jump. "Hey," he answered. "Hey." Her voice was tired but warm. "I made it. I'm in my old apartment, surrounded by everything I left behind, and I have no idea what I'm doing." "Sounds about right." "The board meeting is in 2 days. Michelle has been briefing me all afternoon. The situation is worse than I thought." He heard her sigh. Marcus Phillips has been telling everyone that the merger is essential for the company's survival. He's been cooking the numbers, making it look like layoffs are inevitable with or without the deal. But they're not. No, there are other options, harder options that require more creativity and less profit for shareholders, but options that don't require destroying 20,000 lives. She paused. The board doesn't want to hear about hard options. They want easy answers and quick returns. So what's your strategy? I'm going to tell them the truth about the cooked numbers, about the alternatives, about what this merger will actually cost in human terms. And then I'm going to appeal to whatever shred of conscience they have left. Will that work? I don't know. Probably not. Another sigh. But I have to try. I have to look those people in the eye and say what needs to be said, even if no one listens. That sounds like the Claire I know. The Claire you know is terrified. Her voice cracked slightly. Every instinct I have is telling me to run, to get back in the car and drive to you and forget any of this ever happened. But you're not going to. No, I'm not. A pause. How's Lily? Sad, trying to be brave, asking me questions I can't answer. I'm sorry, I hate that I'm causing her pain. You're also giving her something to hope for. That matters. Does it? Yeah, it does. Evan leaned against the wall, wishing he could reach through the phone and hold her. Hope is in short supply around here. You brought it back. I'm trying not to let you down. You haven't. Not yet. Evan, she trailed off, then started again. I need to tell you something. Something I should have said before I left. What? I love you. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back and couldn't anymore. I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other for 3 weeks. I know this is insane. But I love you. I love Lily. I love the life I had for those few days in that cabin. And whatever happens Friday, I need you to know that. Evan's throat was tight. Claire, you don't have to say it back. I'm not asking for that. I just needed you to know. I love you too. Silence. Then a sound that might have been a sob or might have been a laugh. Really? Really. I've been trying not to admit it because it scares the hell out of me. But yeah, I love you. For whatever that's worth. It's worth everything. Her voice was thick with tears. It's worth more than you know. Then come back. Fight your fight, say what needs to be said, and come back to us. I will. I promise I'll try. Trying is all I ask. They talked for another hour. About nothing, about everything, about the small details of their days and the large fears of their hearts. When they finally hung up, Evan felt both better and worse. Better because he'd heard her voice, because he'd said what he'd been afraid to say. Worse because she was so far away, because Friday felt like a lifetime away, because there were no guarantees about anything. He checked on Lily one more time. She was asleep, her face peaceful in the dim glow of her nightlight, then went to bed himself, staring at the ceiling and waiting for a sleep that was slow to come. The next 2 days passed in a blur of anxiety and routine. Evan worked his shifts, fed his daughter, went through the motions of normal life while his mind was 300 miles away in a boardroom he'd never seen. Claire called every night, as promised. Each call was shorter than the last, her voice growing more strained as Friday approached. They're pushing back hard, she said on Thursday night. Marcus has the votes lined up. He's been making promises, board seats, consulting fees, kickbacks that are barely legal. The merger benefits too many powerful people. But you're still going to fight? I'm still going to fight. A pause. Evan, I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that I'm going to lose. I know. And if I lose, I don't know what happens next. I don't know who I'll be on the other side of this. You'll be the woman who tried, the woman who stood up for what was right, even when it was easier not to. That's who you'll be. Is that enough? It's more than most people ever do. I love you. I love you too. Call me tomorrow night. Whatever happens. I will. Friday was the longest day of Evan's life. He couldn't focus on anything. At work, he stocked the wrong shelves, gave a customer the wrong change, dropped a box of screws that scattered across the floor like metallic rain. Marcus sent him home early, taking one look at his face and telling him he was useless until he got his head straight. At home, he paced. He checked his phone every 30 seconds. He tried to distract himself with housework, with bills, with anything that might occupy his hands. But his mind was somewhere else entirely. In a boardroom hundreds of miles away, watching a woman he loved fight a battle she might not win. Lily came home from school and found him standing at the window, staring at nothing. "Is it over?" she asked. "Not yet. The meeting started an hour ago." "How long will it take?" "I don't know. As long as it takes." They waited together, father and daughter, the silence of the cabin pressing in around them. Lily tried to do homework but couldn't concentrate. Evan tried to make dinner but burned the pasta. Eventually they gave up on pretending and just sat on the couch, watching the light fade outside, waiting for a phone call that would change everything. At 7:30, Evan's phone rang. His hand was shaking as he answered. "Claire?" "It's over." Her voice was raw, exhausted, stripped of everything except the bare facts. "We voted." "And?" A long pause. Evan's heart stopped. "I won." The words didn't register at first. "You... what?" "I won. The merger is dead. The board voted 8-4 to reject the deal and pursue alternative restructuring options." She laughed, a strange, disbelieving sound. "I won, Evan. 20,000 people are going to keep their jobs." "Oh my God." Evan's legs gave out. He sank onto the couch, tears springing to his eyes. "Claire, that's amazing. That's..." "I know. I can't believe it either." Her voice cracked. "I went in there expecting to lose. I said everything I needed to say, made my case as clearly as I could, and then I sat back and waited for them to destroy me. But then the vote happened, and how did you change their minds?" "I don't know. Maybe I didn't. Maybe they were looking for an excuse to do the right thing, and I just gave them one." She took a shaky breath. "Or maybe some of them remembered why they got into business in the first place. Before the corruption and the greed took over, maybe they wanted to feel like good people again. What happens now?" "Now, I hand the company over to someone who can lead it the way it deserves to be led. Someone younger, with more energy, who hasn't burned out and run away to the mountains." She paused. "There's a woman on the board, Elena Vasquez. She's been fighting for workers' rights for years. I'm recommending her as my permanent replacement." "And they'll listen to you?" "After today? Yeah. I think they will." Lily was tugging at Evan's sleeve, her eyes wide. "What's happening? Is Claire okay?" Evan put the phone on speaker. "Claire, Lily's here. Say hi." "Hi, Lily." Claire's voice softened immediately. "I have good news." "You won?" Lily's voice was trembling. "You really won." "I really won. The bad merger isn't happening. Lots of people get to keep their jobs." Lily burst into tears. Not sad tears, but the overwhelming tears of relief and joy that children feel without embarrassment. "So you're coming back? You're coming home?" The word hung in the air. Home. "Yes, sweetheart." Claire's voice was thick with emotion. "I'm coming home. Tomorrow morning, first thing. I'll drive through the night if I have to." "You don't have to drive through the night," Evan said. "Get some sleep. We'll be here when you arrive." "I know. That's the best part." She laughed through her tears. "Knowing you'll be there. Knowing I have somewhere to come back to." They talked for a few more minutes. Logistics, details, the small practicalities that anchor enormous emotions to something manageable. After they hung up, Lily threw herself into Evan's arms and didn't let go for a long time. "She's coming back," Lily whispered. "She's really coming back. She's really coming back. Do you think she'll stay this time?" "I think so. But Even if she doesn't, even if life throws more challenges at us, we'll figure it out. Together. Together, Lily agreed. That night, for the first time in days, Evan slept deeply and dreamlessly. Claire arrived the next afternoon, her car pulling into the driveway just as the sun was beginning its descent toward the mountains. Evan and Lily were waiting on the porch. They'd been waiting for hours, neither of them willing to be anywhere else when she finally appeared. She got out of the car slowly, looking exhausted but somehow lighter than she had when she left, like the weight she'd been carrying for 15 years had finally been lifted. Lily was off the porch and running before Evan could stop her, crashing into Claire with enough force to make the woman stumble backward. "You're here," Lily said, her face buried in Claire's stomach. "You're really here. I'm really here." Claire knelt and held Lily tight. "And I'm not going anywhere, not unless you come with me." Evan walked toward them slowly, savoring the moment, wanting to remember every detail, the golden light, the sound of birds, the way Claire looked up at him with eyes full of tears and hope, and something that looked remarkably like peace. "Hey," he said. "Hey yourself." He pulled her to her feet and into his arms, and she melted against him like she'd been holding herself together through sheer willpower and could finally let go. "I did it," she whispered into his chest. "I actually did it. I never doubted you. Liar, you doubted me constantly." "Okay, fair, but I hoped. That's almost as good." She laughed, and the sound was the most beautiful thing he'd ever heard. They went inside together, the three of them, and Claire told the whole story over dinner, the confrontation with Marcus Phillips, the impassioned speech she'd given to the board, the agonizing wait while they deliberated, the shock when the final vote was announced. "What made them change their minds?" Evan asked. "I'm not entirely sure, but I think—" Claire hesitated. "I think they were tired too. Tired of being the bad guys, tired of making decisions that hurt people. I gave them permission to choose differently, and some of them took it." "What about Marcus?" "He's done. The vote exposed his manipulation, his cooked numbers. He'll face an investigation, probably criminal charges." Claire shook her head. "Part of me feels sorry for him. He was just playing the game the way he'd been taught to play it. But the game was wrong, and someone had to say so. And that someone was you. That someone was me, finally." She smiled, and it reached her eyes in a way it hadn't before. "I spent 15 years being the person the company wanted me to be. Today, I was finally the person I wanted to be." After dinner, after Lily had been read to and tucked in and assured multiple times that Claire would be there in the morning, Evan and Claire found themselves on the porch again. Their spot. Their sanctuary. "So what now?" Evan asked. "Now I figure out who I am without a job title." Claire leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "I have money, more than I'll ever need, and for the first time in my life I have time. I want to use it well." "Any ideas?" "A few. I've been thinking about starting a foundation, something to help workers who are affected by corporate mergers and restructuring, retraining programs, job placement services, that kind of thing." "That sounds meaningful." "It would be, but it would also require travel, meetings, all the things I ran away from." She turned to look at him. "I don't want to become that person again, Evan. The person who's always working, always chasing the next goal. I want to have a life, a real life, with you and Lily. We can figure out a balance. Can we?" It's easy to say that now, when everything feels possible. But what happens when the foundation gets complicated? When there are problems that only I can solve? When the pull of that world starts feeling irresistible again? Then we talk about it, we adjust, we find a way. He took her hand. "I'm not asking you to give up who you are, Claire. I'm asking you to let me be part of your life while you figure out who that is. And if I mess it up, if I fall back into old patterns, then we deal with it, together." You keep saying that word, together, because it's the only way this works, because neither of us can do this alone. He squeezed her hand. "I've been alone for 6 years. I'm tired of it. I want a partner, someone to share the good parts and help carry the hard parts. Is that what you want?" Claire was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, that's exactly what I want." "Then we'll make it work. Whatever it takes. She kissed him, soft and sweet, and the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out below, but somehow beautiful anyway. "I have something to tell you," Claire said when they finally pulled apart. "What?" "I called my mother last night after the vote." Evan's eyebrows rose. "How did that go?" "Terrifying, awkward, uncomfortable." Claire laughed softly. "But also good. She cried. I cried. We said things that needed to be said years ago." "Like what?" "Like I'm sorry, like I was wrong, like I didn't mean to become a stranger to my own family." She took a breath. "She wants to meet you and Lily. She's talking about coming to visit." "That's a big step." "It is. I'm not sure I'm ready for it." "You don't have to be ready. You just have to be willing to try." "There's that word again." Claire smiled. "You really believe trying is enough?" "I believe trying is everything. The results are out of our control. The effort is what matters." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being afraid." He pulled her closer. "You taught me that." "I taught you that?" "Yeah, you walked away from everything you'd ever known because you wanted something real. That takes courage I never had. You made me want to be braver." "We made each other braver," Claire corrected. "That's how it works." They sat on the porch until the chill drove them inside, talking about everything and nothing, making plans and abandoning them, dreaming out loud about futures they might have once thought impossible. When they finally went to bed, Claire in the guest room, because Lily was watching and they were trying to set a good example. Evan lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and marveling at how much his life had changed. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a single father struggling to make ends meet, going through the motions of a life he'd stopped believing in. Now he had hope. He had love. He had a future that felt worth looking forward to. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. There would be challenges ahead: Claire's mother visit, the foundation she wanted to start, the inevitable complications of blending two broken lives into something whole. There would be fights and misunderstandings and moments when everything felt impossible. But there would also be mornings with cinnamon rolls and evenings on the porch, and a little girl who had finally stopped asking if people were going to leave. There would be trying, always trying, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. 6 months had passed since Claire Monroe had driven back up that gravel driveway, and the cabin that Evan Brooks once thought of as merely a place to survive had transformed into something he never dared to imagine. A home that breathed with life, laughter, and the kind of love that doesn't announce itself but simply exists, steady and warm, like sunlight through morning windows. The changes had been gradual, almost imperceptible at first. Claire had moved her things from the guest room into Evan's bedroom 3 weeks after her return, a transition that happened without discussion or ceremony. One morning, her clothes were simply there beside his in the closet, her toothbrush next to his by the sink, her presence woven so seamlessly into the fabric of their daily life that it felt like she had always been there. Lily had adjusted with the resilience that only children possess. She no longer asked if Claire was going to leave. That question had been replaced by others, more hopeful ones. When would Claire teach her to make bread? Could they plant more vegetables in the garden? Would Claire come to her school play in the spring? The foundation Claire had dreamed of was becoming reality. She'd named it the Second Chance Initiative, and it operated out of a small office in town, 20 minutes away, close enough that she could be present in Lily's life, far enough that the work didn't consume her the way her old career had. She'd hired 3 people to help run it, delegating in ways she never had before, trusting others to carry pieces of the mission so she didn't have to carry it all alone. "You're different," her assistant Michelle had said during a video call last week. "I've known you for 8 years, and I've never seen you like this." "Like what?" "Happy. Actually happy. Not the fake happy you used to perform for shareholders, real happy." Which Claire had smiled at that, glancing out the window at the mountains that had become her daily view. "I didn't know there was a difference until I found it." Now, on a crisp October morning, with the leaves turning gold and red on the trees outside, Claire sat at the kitchen table reviewing grant applications while Evan made breakfast. Lily was still asleep. It was Saturday, and she'd earned the right to sleep in after a week of tests at school. "Your mother's flight lands at 3, Evan said, flipping pancakes with the practiced ease of a man who had made thousands of them. Are you ready? No? Claire didn't look up from her laptop. I'm absolutely not ready. It's been 6 months since you talked to her, and 3 months since she asked to visit. She's made an effort. I know she has. That's what terrifies me. Claire finally closed the laptop and rubbed her eyes. When she was disapproving and distant, I knew how to handle it. I could be defensive, put up walls, tell myself she didn't understand. But now she's trying to understand, and I don't know what to do with that. Evan set a plate of pancakes in front of her, leaning down to kiss the top of her head. You do what you've been doing for 6 months. You try. You're honest. You let yourself be imperfect. What if she doesn't like who I've become? Then that's her loss. But I don't think that's going to happen. He sat across from her. You've told me about your mother, strict, demanding, impossible to please, but you've also told me she called you crying after 15 years of silence. People don't do that unless they want to change. People say they want to change all the time. Following through is harder. True, but you did it. Why can't she? Claire stared at her pancakes, pushing them around with her fork. What if seeing her brings back everything I ran away from? What if I remember why I became the person I was, and I start wanting that again? Evan reached across the table and took her hand. Then we'll deal with it. Together, remember? Together. She squeezed his hand. I'm really tired of that word being the answer to everything. Too bad. It's the only answer I've got. She laughed despite herself, and some of the tension drained from her shoulders. Fine. Let's go pick up my mother from the airport and hope she doesn't hate everything about my life choices. That's the spirit. The drive to the airport was long enough for Claire's anxiety to build, plateau, and build again. She sat in the passenger seat of Evan's truck. They'd traded in her sleek black car for something more practical months ago, watching the landscape shift from mountains to suburbs to the sprawl of the city she'd once called home. I haven't been back here since the board meeting, she said as the skyline came into view. Does it feel strange? It feels like looking at a photograph of someone else's life. She shook her head. I used to know every building, every street. I had my favorite coffee shop on the corner of 5th and Main, my preferred dry cleaner, my regular table at 3 different restaurants. Now it all looks foreign. Is that good or bad? I don't know. Both, maybe. She watched the buildings pass. Part of me misses it. The energy, the pace, the feeling of being at the center of something important. But a bigger part of me is relieved I'm not there anymore. You can always visit. The foundation has events in the city sometimes. I know, and I do. But visiting is different from living. Visiting means I get to leave. She smiled at him. I like leaving. I like knowing there's somewhere else I belong. They arrived at the airport with 20 minutes to spare, parking in the short-term lot and walking to the arrivals terminal. Claire's hands were shaking as they waited by the security exit, watching travelers stream through with their luggage and their reunions. What does she look like? Evan asked. I've never seen a picture. Like me, mostly. Same eyes, same nose. She's shorter, though, and her hair is gray now. She stopped dyeing it years ago. Claire paused. She'll be wearing something elegant. She always does. My mother has never understood the concept of casual. So that's where you get it from. What do you mean? When you first showed up, you were wearing clothes that cost more than my truck. Even now, your casual is more put together than most people's formal. Claire looked down at her outfit. A simple sweater and jeans, but both expensive, both carefully chosen. Old habits. I'm not complaining. You look beautiful. You're just saying that because you're nervous too. I'm terrified, Evan admitted. This is my first time meeting your mother, and based on everything you've told me, she's going to judge me for my job, my house, my income level, and probably my haircut. Your haircut is fine. That's not reassuring. A woman appeared through the security doors, and Claire's breath caught. Eleanor Monroe was exactly as Evan had imagined. Elegant, composed, moving with the kind of deliberate grace that came from decades of presenting herself to the world. She was pulling a small suitcase behind her, her silver hair swept back from her face, her eyes scanning the crowd. Those eyes landed on Claire, and something shifted in them. Something softened. Claire. Eleanor's voice was steady, but Evan saw the emotion beneath it. You look well. Hi, Mom. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. You made it. Did you think I wouldn't? I wasn't sure. Eleanor set down her suitcase and stood before her daughter, studying her face with the intensity of someone memorizing every detail. You've changed. You look lighter, less burdened. I feel lighter. Good. Eleanor's eyes moved to Evan. And you must be the hardware store worker who stole my daughter from the corporate world. Mom, I'm kidding. Eleanor smiled, an actual genuine smile that transformed her face. I'm Eleanor. It's nice to finally meet the man who brought my daughter back to life. Evan shook her hand, surprised by the warmth of her grip. Nice to meet you too, Mrs. Monroe. Eleanor, please. Mrs. Monroe was my mother-in-law, and she was a nightmare. She looked between them. Well, are we going to stand here all day, or are you going to show me this cabin that's worth more than a penthouse in Manhattan? The drive back was less awkward than Claire had feared. Eleanor asked questions about the foundation, about Lily, about their daily routines, and listened to the answers with genuine interest rather than barely concealed criticism. You seem surprised that I'm being pleasant, Eleanor observed about halfway through the drive. A little, Claire admitted. I've had 6 months to think about this visit. 6 months to practice not being the mother I was before. Eleanor looked out the window at the passing landscape. Your father dying changed a lot of things for me, Claire. It made me realize how much time I'd wasted being disappointed instead of being present. Dad died 3 years ago. Why did it take so long to reach out? Pride. Stubbornness. Fear that you'd reject me the way I'd rejected you. Eleanor's voice was quiet. I told myself you didn't need me, that you were successful and happy, and better off without my interference. It wasn't until you quit that I realized I'd been lying to myself all along. How did you know I quit? It was in the news, darling. CEO of Advanced Technologies resigns mysteriously. That's front-page material. Eleanor smiled sadly. I watched the coverage and I thought, something is finally breaking through to her. I hoped it meant you might be ready to hear from me. I wasn't ready, not at first. I know, but you called me back eventually. That's what matters. They arrived at the cabin in the late afternoon, the golden light making everything look warm and welcoming. Eleanor stood in the driveway for a long moment, taking it all in. The worn porch, the slightly crooked shutters, the garden that Claire and Lily had cultivated together. It's lovely, Eleanor said finally. You don't have to lie, Mom. I know it's not what you're used to. I'm not lying. It's lovely because it's yours, because you chose it, because it makes you happy. Eleanor turned to face her daughter. I spent your entire childhood trying to teach you that success meant money and prestige and power. I was wrong. Success is this: a home that feels like home, people who love you, purpose that means something. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Who are you, and what have you done with my mother? I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be the mother you deserved all along. Eleanor reached out and touched Claire's face, her own eyes glistening. I'm sorry it took me so long. I'm sorry, too, for shutting you out, for not giving you a chance to change. We both made mistakes. Let's make different ones from now on. The front door opened, and Lily appeared on the porch, her hair a mess from her nap, but her eyes bright with curiosity. Is that Claire's mom? She asked Evan, who had come up beside her. That's her. Want to come say hi? Lily approached cautiously, studying Eleanor with the same careful assessment she'd given Claire when they first met. Eleanor, to her credit, knelt down to Lily's level. You must be Lily. Claire has told me so much about you. She talks about you too, Lily said. She was nervous you wouldn't like it here. What do you think? Should I like it here? Lily considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. It's quiet, and sometimes the power goes out. But there are lots of stars at night, and Claire makes really good pasta, and my dad tells the best stories before bed. That sounds wonderful. It is. Lily tilted her head. Claire said you used to be mean. Are you still mean? Lily, Evan said, horrified. It's a fair question. Eleanor didn't flinch. I was mean sometimes. I was so focused on what I thought Claire should be that I forgot to love who she actually was. That was wrong, and I'm trying to do better. Lily absorbed this. Okay, I believe you. But if you're mean to Claire again, I won't forgive you. She's part of our family now. Eleanor's eyes softened. She's lucky to have you as her defender. I know. Lily smiled. Do you want to see the garden? Claire and I planted strawberries. The weekend that followed was nothing like Claire had expected. Eleanor didn't criticize the cabin's small rooms or the secondhand furniture or the modest life her daughter had chosen. Instead, she seemed genuinely curious about every aspect of it, asking Lily about school, helping Claire cook dinner, sitting on the porch with Evan, and talking about topics that ranged from baseball to philosophy. On Sunday afternoon, while Lily was playing in the garden and Evan was fixing a loose board on the deck, Eleanor and Claire found themselves alone in the kitchen. I need to tell you something, Eleanor said. That sounds ominous. It's not. At least I hope it's not. Eleanor took a breath. I've been doing some thinking about my future. The house in Connecticut is too big for me now, and all my friends there remind me of the life I used to live, the country club, the charity galas, the endless competition over whose children were more successful. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to move, somewhere quieter, somewhere closer to... She hesitated. Closer to you, if you'd have me. Claire stared at her mother. You want to move here? Not here exactly, but near here. There's a small town 20 minutes away, isn't there? I saw some lovely houses when we drove through. Mom, that's a huge decision. You can't just uproot your entire life because I want to be part of my daughter's life? Because I want to know my potential granddaughter? Eleanor's voice cracked slightly. Because I'm 72 years old and I've wasted enough time already? Claire was speechless. This wasn't the mother she'd grown up with. This wasn't the woman who had criticized every choice, demanded perfection, made Claire feel like nothing she did was ever enough. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll let me try. Eleanor reached across the table and took Claire's hands. I'm not asking to move in with you. I'm not asking to be involved in every aspect of your life. I just want to be nearby. I want to have Sunday dinners and birthday parties and the chance to watch Lily grow up. I want to stop being a stranger to my own family. Claire thought about all the years of distance, all the hurt, all the walls she'd built to protect herself from her mother's judgment. She thought about how hard it had been to let Evan in, to let Lily in, to believe that she deserved love and acceptance. And she thought about how much had changed since she'd arrived at that cabin with a suitcase and a broken heart. Okay, she said finally. Let's think about it. Together. Eleanor's smile was radiant. Thank you. That's all I ask. The months that followed were a slow unfolding of something Claire had never thought possible: reconciliation. Eleanor found a small cottage in town, close enough to visit regularly, but far enough to maintain boundaries. She became a fixture in their lives, joining them for Sunday dinners, attending Lily's school events, even helping Claire with foundation work when her experience in high society fundraising proved unexpectedly valuable. Your grandmother is weird, Lily announced one evening, a few weeks before Christmas. Weird how? Claire asked. She brought me a present today, a first edition book from like 100 years ago. Who gives a kid an old book? Did you like it? I loved it, Lily grinned. She said it was a story about a girl who goes on adventures and doesn't need anyone to save her. She said it reminded her of me. Claire's heart swelled. That sounds like something she would say. She also said she's proud of you, for building a new life, for being brave. Lily looked at Claire with those two wise eyes. She said she wasted a lot of years being scared, and she doesn't want you to make the same mistakes. She told you all that? We talk about stuff when she drives me home from school. She's actually pretty cool when she's not trying to be fancy. Claire laughed, wiping unexpected tears from her eyes. Yeah, she is. Christmas Eve arrived with a gentle snowfall that transformed the world outside into something magical. The cabin was decorated simply, a small tree in the corner, lights strung along the porch, stockings hung by the fireplace. Eleanor had contributed a few elegant touches from her old life, and the blend of modest and refined somehow worked perfectly. They gathered around the dinner table, Evan, Claire, Lily, Eleanor, and a few friends they'd made in the months since settling into this new life. Marcus and his wife were there, along with Mrs. Henderson from down the road, and a young couple from Claire's foundation who had become close friends. A toast, Evan said, raising his glass, to unexpected gifts, to second chances, to family, however we find it. To family, everyone echoed. Claire looked around the table at these faces that had become her world. The daughter who wasn't hers by blood, but was hers in every way that mattered. The mother she'd written off who had fought her way back. The friends who accepted her not for who she'd been, but for who she was becoming. And Evan. Always Evan. The man who had opened his door to a stranger with a suitcase and somehow given her everything she didn't know she needed. After dinner, after the dishes were cleared and the guests had gone home, and Eleanor had retreated to the guest room, Claire found Evan on the porch. Snow was still falling, soft and silent, covering the world in white. "What are you doing out here?" she asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Thinking." "About what?" "About how different my life is from a year ago." He turned to face her, pulling her into his arms. "A year ago, I was alone. Surviving, but not living, like my father said. Now I have you and your mother and this house full of people I care about. It doesn't feel real sometimes. It feels real to me. Good. I need someone to keep me grounded." He kissed her forehead. "I have something for you. I was going to wait until tomorrow, but I can't anymore." "Evan." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Claire's breath caught. "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "I know we haven't talked about marriage. I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. But I wanted you to have something that shows how I feel, something permanent." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not a diamond, but a simple band of gold with a small sapphire set into it. The stone was the exact color of the mountain sky on a clear day. "It was my grandmother's," Evan explained. "She gave it to my grandfather when she proposed to him. In her family, the women did the proposing. She said it was the only way to make sure the men didn't chicken out." Claire laughed through her tears. "Your grandmother sounds like she was something." She was. She was fierce and stubborn, and absolutely certain about what she wanted. He took the ring from the box. "I'm not proposing, not tonight, but I'm giving you this because I want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here, waiting. Like always." Claire looked at the ring, at this man who had given her space and time and patience when she'd needed it most. She thought about all the walls she'd built and how he'd never tried to tear them down, just stood outside them, steady and present, until she was ready to open the door herself. "Put it on me," she said. "Claire, I'm not saying yes to a proposal you haven't made. I'm saying yes to this. To us. To whatever comes next." She held out her hand. "Put it on me." He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you. Is that a promise?" "It's better than a promise. It's a choice. One I'm making right now, and one I'll keep making every day until there are no more days left." She kissed him, long and deep, while the snow fell around them and the world held its breath. "Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for being worth waiting for." They stood on the porch until the cold drove them inside, then climbed the stairs together to the bedroom that had become theirs, to the life that had become theirs, to the future that stretched out before them, full of possibility. Spring came early that year, melting the snow and coaxing green shoots from the frozen ground. Claire watched from the kitchen window as Lily helped Eleanor plant new flowers in the garden, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. "You're staring again," Evan said, coming up behind her. "I'm appreciating." "Same thing." He wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you appreciating?" "Everything. This life, these people, the fact that I almost missed all of it." She leaned back against him. "If I hadn't driven here that day, if I hadn't knocked on your door, if I hadn't been desperate enough to take your jokes seriously, then something else would have happened. Some other path would have opened." He kissed her neck. "I believe that now. I believe that people who are meant to find each other eventually do." "When did you get so philosophical?" "I've had a lot of time to think, watching you sleep, mostly." "That's creepy." "It's romantic." "It's both." She turned in his arms to face him, this man who had become her home. His hair was longer now, his face more relaxed, the permanent furrow between his brows smoothed away by months of happiness. "I have news," she said. "Good news or bad news?" Good news, I think. Terrifying news. Life-changing news. Evan's expression shifted to concern. Claire, what is it? She took his hand and placed it on her stomach, watched his face as understanding dawned. Are you... Is this... I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. Her voice trembled. I found out yesterday. I wanted to tell you when we were alone, when I could see your face, when... She didn't get to finish because he was kissing her, lifting her off her feet, laughing and crying at the same time. We're having a baby, he said, setting her down. We're actually having a baby. We're actually having a baby. She was crying now too. Are you happy? Is this okay? We didn't plan this, and I know your life is already complicated with Lily and the foundation and my mother living in town, and Claire. He cupped her face in his hands. I have never been happier in my entire life. This is everything. This is more than everything. I was so scared to tell you. Why? Because I've never done this before. I've never had a family, not really. I've never been responsible for a tiny human who depends on me for everything. She laughed shakily. I've run a Fortune 500 company, but this terrifies me more than any board meeting ever did. Good. If you weren't scared, I'd be worried. He pulled her close. We'll figure it out, together. That's the deal, remember? The deal. Right. She breathed him in, this man who made everything seem possible. Should we tell Lily? Let's wait a little while. Until we're further along. Until it feels more real. He grinned. Although she's going to be insufferable when she finds out. She's been asking for a sibling since she was 5. She has? Every birthday, every Christmas, she told Santa she wanted a brother or sister more than any toy. His grin softened. After Sarah died, I thought I'd never be able to give her that. I thought our family was complete at 2. But here we are. Here we are. They stood in the kitchen, holding each other, listening to the sounds of Lily and Eleanor in the garden, feeling the spring sun warm through the windows. You know what I realized? Claire said after a while. What? That day I showed up at your door, I thought I was running away from my life, but I was actually running toward it. Toward you, toward Lily, toward everything I didn't know I needed. She looked up at him. I just had to get lost enough to find it. Funny how that works. Funny, she agreed, and terrifying and wonderful. Welcome to life, Evan said. It's all 3 at once. The wedding happened in June, small and simple, in the backyard of the cabin that had become the center of their universe. Lily was the flower girl, scattering petals with aggressive enthusiasm. Eleanor sat in the front row, crying happy tears into a handkerchief that probably cost more than the entire ceremony. Claire wore a simple white dress, and Evan wore the one suit he owned, and they exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Promises not of perfection, but of presence, not of forever, but of every day, not of never failing, but of always trying. I didn't believe in second chances, Claire said, holding Evan's hands as the sun set behind the mountains. I thought life was about one shot, one path, one chance to get it right. But you taught me that it's never too late to start over. That the story isn't over until we decide it is. That home isn't a place but a choice we make, over and over, to stay. I didn't believe in letting anyone in, Evan replied. I thought I'd had my great love, my one shot at happiness, and that asking for more was greedy. But you showed up at my door with a suitcase and a broken heart, and you reminded me that love isn't a finite resource, that there's always room for more, that opening yourself to pain is the only way to open yourself to joy. They exchanged rings, hers the sapphire that had been his grandmother's, his a simple gold band that matched, and kissed while their small gathering cheered and Lily shouted commentary about how gross it was, but also kind of nice. The reception was dinner on the porch, fairy lights strung between the trees, dancing to music from a small speaker propped on the railing. Claire danced with Eleanor, both of them crying again. Evan danced with Lily, lifting her onto his feet the way he had when she was tiny. Are you happy, Dad? Lily asked. Happier than I've ever been. Even happier than when you married Mom? The question was innocent, but it carried weight. Evan thought carefully before answering. Different happy. Your mom was my first love, and she gave me you, and I'll never stop being grateful for that. But Claire is my second chance. She's proof that life goes on, that hearts can heal, that there's always more story to tell. He kissed Lily's forehead. Both happinesses are real. Both matter. Do you understand? I think so. Lily considered this. It's like how I love Mom even though she's gone, but I also love Claire even though she's here. Both things can be true at the same time. Exactly. Both things can be true. I'm glad you let her stay, Dad. That first morning when she showed up with her suitcase, I'm glad you said yes. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. The baby came in December, a week before Christmas, during a snowstorm that stranded them at the small hospital in town. They named him Samuel, Sam for short, after Evan's grandfather, the man who had waited patiently for a woman brave enough to propose. Lily was instantly smitten, declaring herself Sam's official protector and guardian against all threats, including but not limited to loud noises, bad dreams, and their neighbor's cat, who she didn't trust. Eleanor practically moved into the cabin for the first month, helping with midnight feedings and diaper changes and the 1,000 small crises that came with a newborn. Claire watched her mother rock her grandson to sleep and marveled at how much had changed, not just in her own life, but in the relationship she'd thought was beyond repair. I wasted so much time, Eleanor said one night. Sam nestled in her arms. All those years I spent criticizing you, pushing you toward a version of success that never mattered. I could have had this instead. I could have had a daughter who trusted me, a granddaughter who actually wanted me around. Instead, I had a corner office and an empty house. You have it now, Claire said. That's what counts. Does it? Does now make up for then? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't have to make up for it. Maybe it just has to be different. Claire took her mother's free hand. I spent so long being angry at you, blaming you for all the ways I turned out wrong. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm just grateful that we figured it out before it was too late. We almost didn't. Almost only counts in horseshoes. Claire smiled. That's something Evan says. I have no idea what it means, but it feels appropriate. Eleanor laughed, careful not to wake the sleeping baby. He's good for you. This life is good for you. I know. I spent 35 years chasing the wrong things, and then I stumbled into the right ones by accident. She looked down at Sam, at his tiny fingers and peaceful face. I'm going to do better with him. I'm going to teach him that success isn't about money or power. It's about having people who love you and work that matters, and the courage to choose happiness even when it's hard. He's lucky to have you as his mother. I'm lucky to have the chance to be one. They sat together in the quiet nursery, grandmother and mother and sleeping child, while the snow fell outside and the world turned on its endless axis. 5 years later, Claire stood on the porch of the cabin, their cabin, expanded now to accommodate a growing family, and watched the chaos unfold in the yard below. Sam was chasing Lily around the garden, both of them shrieking with laughter. Eleanor was sitting in a chair by the flowers, reading a book, but glancing up every few seconds to make sure no one had injured themselves. Evan was at the grill, arguing good-naturedly with Marcus about the proper way to cook burgers. The foundation had grown beyond Claire's wildest dreams, helping thousands of displaced workers find new careers and rebuild their lives. She had stepped back from daily operations 2 years ago, trusting the team she'd built to carry the mission forward. Now she consulted when needed, but most of her energy went to the life happening right in front of her, a life she had almost missed, a life she had almost been too afraid to claim. Penny for your thoughts, Evan said, appearing beside her with 2 cold drinks. Just thinking about how different everything is from what I expected. Good different or bad different? Good different. The best different. She took the drink he offered. I was just remembering the day I showed up here. How terrified I was. How sure I was that I was making a mistake. Were you? No. It was the first right decision I'd made in 15 years. She leaned against him. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for asking me to. They watched their children play, their family gathered, their life unfolding in ways neither of them could have predicted. Any regrets? Evan asked. Claire thought about the question seriously, the way she always did when he asked important things. No, she said finally. Not a single one. And standing there in the golden afternoon light, surrounded by love and laughter and the people who had become her entire world, Claire Monroe Brooks knew it was the truest thing she had ever said. The story didn't end there, of course. Stories never really end. They just pause at moments that feel complete, that offer a glimpse of what might come next. There would be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt, more times when the easy path would call and the right path would be hard. But they would face it all together. That was the deal. That was the promise. That was the choice they made every day, over and over, until there were no more days left. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.